Chapter 3851. From Shanghai Tianhua's words, the Southern Heaven Gate could tell what the pavilion master was trying to say. It seemed like he did not want to interfere with the disciplinary hall. As a matter of fact, just as the Southern Heaven Gate had thought, Shanghai Tianhua did not want to pressure the disciplinary hall, or strictly speaking, Ramjia, just because of Nan Tianyong's death. Ramjia was a trusted general that Shanghai Tianhua had personally raised. He had always been highly regarded by the Southern Heaven Gate. Although there had been some criticism in the past, Ramjia's ability and achievements were obvious to all. Everyone had their own way of doing things. Since Shanghai Tianhua thought highly of Ramjia, he would not interfere with Ramjia's business. Otherwise, if he were to interfere too much, not only would it bring no benefits, it would also cause a rift in their relationship. With the wisdom of Shanghai Tianhua, he would not make such a low-level mistake. Furthermore, although Nan Tianyong's death was a big deal in Shanghai Tianhua's eyes, it was still a small matter. His personal intelligence had already reported to him that Nan Tianyong had tried to kill Lin Er in front of the crowd, only to be killed in the end. Based on Shangguan Tianhua's usual way of doing things, even though he was the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he wouldn't blindly protect his own people. It was normal for cultivators to kill each other. As long as they weren't killed by underhanded means, even if it was a core disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion who died, Shangguan Tianhua wouldn't make a big fuss about it. Deaths were bound to happen in the Jianghu. Since he was not as strong as the pavilion master, there was nothing more to say. He deserved to die. However, it was impossible for Shanghai Tianhua to tell his disciples about this. He could only express his stance by treating it coldly. The Southern Heaven Gate initially thought they had a chance to convince the pavilion master to help them. With just a few words, they would be able to pressure the disciplinary hall, and Lin Er would have nowhere to hide. However, they did not expect Shanghai Tianhua to treat it so coldly. In front of the top boss of Shangguan Tianhua. After all, the Southern Sky Gate was only an insignificant figure. Since the big shot had already expressed his stance, no matter how dissatisfied the small figure was, he wouldn't dare to continue dwelling on this issue. Otherwise, if he angered the big shot, it would be hard to say what would happen to him. Pavilion Master, this disciple also knows that the Law Enforcement Hall has its own rules and does not allow external forces to interfere. This disciple has no complaints about this, but this disciple and Nan Tianyong are brothers from the same mother. Now that my brother has been killed, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Even if it's just me, I must avenge him. The South Heaven Gate's eyes were filled with tears as he spoke in a righteous tone. The passionate and righteous expression was obviously an act. However, the South Heaven Gate was not afraid of being seen through by Shanghai Tianhua. Even if it was a fake act, the content of the words was the truth. Whether it was for the reputation of the three heroes of the Nan clan. In order to give their eldest brother, Nan Tianba, a satisfactory explanation, with the Southern Heaven Gate's current situation, they had to find Lin Er and avenge their third brother, Nan Tianyong. You're quite ambitious. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Shangguan Tianhua nodded calmly, but didn't say anything else. Based on Shangguan Tianhua's temperament, no matter how noble or lowly he was, he would always praise hot-blooded and loyal men. However, he had behaved in such a cold manner. It was obvious that he had seen through the South Heaven Gate's plan. The South Heaven Gate's face blushed in embarrassment. Luckily, he was quite shrewd. He managed to remain calm and continued, Pavilion Master, I, an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, Yu Zhe, witnessed with my own eyes that the person who killed my third brother, Nan Tianyong, was a rogue cultivator who called himself Lin Er. The only person who knows the identity of this rogue cultivator is the manager of the Hong Merchant Guild, Hong Zhong. Lin Er? Shanghai Laner, who was playing with the little curly bear, pricked up her ears when she heard the familiar word. Although Linny had never told her that he was Lin Er, and Shanghai Laner had always been naive, her intelligence was not low. She could easily guess the relationship between Lin E and Lin E based on what Linny had asked her to do. Even if she was a bit confused about why Yuzha couldn't recognize Linny in front of him, she could still guess what was going on. She just didn't point it out. Lin Er killed Nan Tianyong? After hearing the South Heaven Gate's words, Shanghai Laner was stunned. Due to the fact that she had been supervised by Shanghai Tianhua for the past few days, the rumors that were spreading in the outside world did not reach her ears. She was stunned when she heard the news. Shanghai Laner was not strong herself, but she had been influenced since she was young. She knew the strength of a supervising deacon of the Soaring Sky Pavilion like the back of her hand. He was at least at the peak of the late-stage Foundation establishment realm. Her junior brother was able to kill him? Shanghai Laner was instantly curious. She did not care about Nan Tianyong's life or death. In comparison, she was closer to her junior brother, Lin Yi. Therefore, it went without saying that she would side with Lin Yi. Previously, Nan Tianyong and Yu Jia had been looking for the so-called Lin heir. Since this pair of master and disciple had been plotting against her junior brother, Lin Yi, they were definitely not good people. Nan Tianyong must have pushed them too far, so her junior brother had no choice but to kill them. That must be it. Shangguan Lan wasn't interested in the conversation between her grandfather and the Southern Skygate, but now she was interested. She just wanted to gather some information for her junior brother Lin Yi, so that she could prepare for anything in advance, so that Lin Yi wouldn't be flustered when the time came. Hongzhong. Shanghai Tianhua hesitated for a moment, then looked at the South Heaven Gate and said, "You want to find him?" Seeing that Shanghai Tianhua seemed to be interested, the South Heaven Gate became excited and said, "Pavilion Master is wise. According to what I know, this shopkeeper Hong not only has a close relationship with Lin Heir, but he also added fuel to the fire during the conflict between Lin Heir and my third brother, Nan Tianyong. His intentions are extremely sinister. Today, this disciple went to find shopkeeper Hong to inquire about Lin Heir's identity, but unexpectedly, not only did this shopkeeper Hong refuse to cooperate with me, but he also rudely ordered several honored guests to kick this disciple out. This is simply not putting our Soaring Sky Pavilion in his eyes. This is intolerable. Please uphold justice for this disciple." At the end of his speech, the Southern Heavenly Gate was filled with righteous indignation. This time, he wasn't faking it. When he recalled the scene of him being thrown down from the second floor, the Southern Heavenly Gate's face couldn't help but burn with embarrassment. Chapter 3852. Since Shanghai Tianhua had no intention of pressuring the law enforcement hall, if Southern Skygate wanted to find Lin Heir, they had to turn their attention to Hongzhong again. If they could persuade Shanghai Tianhua to put pressure on Hongzhong, not only could they get the information about Lin Heir's identity, but they could also help them vent their anger, killing two birds with one stone. Today's situation at the Hong Merchant Guild was completely out of his expectations. The old man Hongzhong did not even place the personal letter of Hong Ying's Four Directions supervising inspector in his eyes. However, in the eyes of the Southern Heavenly Gate, no matter how stubborn Hongzhong was, as long as Shangguan Tianhua was willing to speak up, Hongzhong would have no choice but to kneel and lick his boots obediently. Even a strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its old haunts, not to mention in front of Shanghai Tianhua, the top boss of the North Island. Even if Hongzhong was a shopkeeper of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he was far from the title of a strong dragon. He couldn't even be considered a snake. He was at most a worm. You said that Hongzhong was adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes? Do you have any solid evidence? Shanghai Tianhua asked with a slight frown. Speaking of which, between him and Hongzhong, one was the top tycoon in the North Island, and the other was the spokesperson of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce in the North Island. Not only did they have a lot of official cooperation, but they also had a good personal relationship. However, in Shanghai Tianhua's understanding, Hongzhong had always been kind to people, and he had a good reputation. How could he be adding fuel to the fire in this kind of thing? Pavilion Master, before my third brother had the accident, he was thrown down from the second floor of the Hong Chamber of Commerce by Hongzhong because of Lin Heir. On the day when my third brother fought with Lin Heir, he deliberately let Lin Heir hide in the Hong Chamber of Commerce for 2 hours. After coming out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he was only at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, but he was able to kill my third brother, who was at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, with one move after coming out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If the Hong Chamber of Commerce didn't do something, who would believe it? There are many witnesses. I dare not make any false report. Please investigate. Southern Sky Gate knelt down again and kowtowed. Lin Yi instantly killing Nan Tianyong had nothing to do with Hong Zhong. However, from the other people's point of view, it was only natural for Hong Zhong to be blamed for this. Otherwise, who would believe that a mere cultivator at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm was able to kill a cultivator at the peak of the late stage with a single move? Perhaps only the Hong Chamber of Commerce, which had gathered countless treasures, could achieve this. Perhaps they had some kind of consumable treasure that could instantly kill a peak late Foundation establishment expert? Furthermore, before that, Lin Yi had indeed intentionally stayed in the Hong Chamber of Commerce for 2 whole hours. Such a long period of time was more than enough for him to do anything. It was hard not to be suspicious. Shangguan Tianhua took a deep look at Southern Heavenly Gate, who was kneeling on the ground. His expression turned serious. The South Heaven Gate would not dare to hide the truth from him. In that case, the death of Nan Tianyong was definitely related to the Hong Merchant Guild, especially Hong Zhong. After pondering for a moment, Shanghai Tianhua finally said, "All right, I will ask Hong Zhong about this matter." Although he had a good personal relationship with Hong Zhong. However, Shanghai Tianhua had always been clear about public and private affairs. Since Hong Zhong was indeed suspected of adding fuel to the fire, as the pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, he had to intervene. Hearing this, Southern Heavenly Gate was delighted. He was delighted. As long as Shangguan Tianhua was willing to step forward and ask about this matter, then his objective today would be achieved. As long as Shanghai Tianhua intervened, Hong Zhong would not dare to hide anything from Lin Er's identity, unless he didn't want to stay in the North Island anymore. Just as Southern Heavenly Gate was secretly delighted, Shanghai Laner suddenly said, "Grandpa, it's inappropriate for you to do this." "Inappropriate my ass." The pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion intervened on behalf of his disciple. This was a matter of course. "Inappropriate my ass." Southern Heavenly Gate almost wanted to curse, but when he saw that it was Shanghai Laner who spoke, he had to hold back the curse. Not only could he not show any dissatisfaction, but he had to smile awkwardly. "Oh, what's wrong with it? Little Laner, tell me about it." Shangguan Tianhua asked with great interest. In front of his granddaughter, he was completely an ordinary kind elder. Moreover, although Shanghai Laner did not like to cultivate, she was smart since she was a child. She often had clear and unique views on many things, unlike people in high positions like him, who were sometimes blinded by some interests. Shanghai Laner said seriously, "Grandpa, you once taught me that a gentleman can't complain and cultivate himself." Nan Tianyong couldn't defeat Lin Er and lost his life, but he insisted on blaming Grandpa Hong, who was obviously an outsider. He even asked Grandpa Hong to stand up for him. Isn't this ridiculous? If this precedent is set, then in the future, if any Soaring Sky Pavilion disciple loses outside, won't you have to stand up for him, grandfather? Ugh, mistress, Hong Zhong can't be considered an outsider. He's the one who's adding fuel to the fire. South Heaven Gate immediately tried to defend himself. Adding fuel to the fire? Do you have any proof? Shanghai Laner rolled her eyes at him and said, "From what you said just now, from the beginning to the end, you can't prove that Grandpa Hong is really involved, right? Or can you guarantee with your life that the killer move that Lin Er used to kill Nan Tianyong was given to him by Grandpa Hong for free?" This Southern Heavenly Gate was speechless. How could he have proof for this? He was just using the logical thinking of ordinary people to pour dirty water on Hong Zhong. If he really wanted to guarantee with his life, he did not have the guts and courage to do so. Moreover, even if he could prove that Lin Er's killer move was given by Hong Zhong, how could he prove that Hong Zhong gave it to him for free? In the end, it was all Hong Zhong's words. It was an unsolvable problem. Left with no choice, the South Heaven Gate turned to Shangguan Tianhua. There was no way he could refute Shangguan Laner's words. Even if he could, he would not dare to do so, as what if Shangguan Laner bore a grudge against him? If this miss were to say a few bad things about him in front of her grandfather, then the future of Southern Heavenly Gate would be bleak. So what if he was the eldest senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion? Shanghai Tianhua could easily make him fall to the ground with a single thought. Fortunately, The southern heavenly gate was relieved that this was only Miss Shangwan's own words. As the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, Shanghai Tianhua would always consider his own interests first. He would not be as naive as this Mississippi. However, Shanghai Tianhua's next words made the southern heavenly gate's jaw drop. Chapter 38:53. But Southern Heavenly Gate still wanted to say something, but Shanghai Tianhua waved his hand and interrupted him. After all, my identity is still too sensitive. If someone with ulterior motives thinks that the three pavilions are dissatisfied with the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the impact will be huge. This was not an excuse. For someone like Shanghai Tianhua, anything he did would be interpreted by people with ulterior motives. If he listened to Southern Heavenly Gate's words and asked Hong Zhong about it, it would be easily misinterpreted as him being dissatisfied with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, as Shanghai Laner had said, unless Southern Heavenly Gate could produce conclusive evidence, Shanghai Tianhua would not easily step forward. Grandpa, I'm right again. The three pavilions are not allowed to interfere with the business of the Chamber of Commerce. You can't take the lead in breaking the rules. Furthermore, Grandpa Hong treats your granddaughter so well. Xiaobai was even given to me by him. How can I make things difficult for Grandpa Hong just because of someone's side of the story? Shanghai Laner said proudly. Yes, yes. Little Lon is the one who sees things clearly. Shanghai Tianhua chuckled, looking at the grandfather and granddaughter echoing each other, especially after noticing the deeply hidden, unfathomable look in Shanghai Tianhua's eyes. Southern Heavenly Gate finally realized that this pavilion master had no intention of stepping forward and asking questions. He was just putting on an act for them to see. Southern Heavenly Gate even suspected that Shanghai Laner's words were secretly taught by Shanghai Tianhua in front of him. Otherwise, how could a naive girl like Shanghai Laner refute him so flawlessly and hit the nail on the head? What they didn't know was that although Shangguan Tianhua was acting, he had never taught Shangguan Lan to act with him. To be honest, Shangguan Lan had actually stepped forward to say such a thing, and even Shangguan Tianhua himself hadn't expected it. Apart from feeling gratified, Shanghai Tianhua could not help but feel a sense of pity. Although his granddaughter looked naive and innocent at first glance, she was talented and intelligent. However, he was talented, had a high level of comprehension, and was very quick-witted. He could be said to be an excellent cultivation material. It was a pity that he didn't want to improve. He didn't like boring cultivation. What could he do? Since Shangguan Tianhua had already put it this way, the Southern Heavenly Gate knew that it was futile to stay here any longer. In fact, he might even incur the ire of the First Mississippi. He had no choice but to bow respectfully and kneel down, saying then, "This disciple shall take his leave." Shanghai Tianhua nodded slightly. Then, he did not look at him and allowed Southern Heavenly Gate to leave. Looking at Southern Heavenly Gate's back, Shangguan Lan stuck out her tongue and said, "Grandpa, that person is so bad. He actually wants to instigate you to deal with Grandpa Hong. He really has bad intentions. He probably learned a lesson from your Grandpa Hong. So he wants to borrow this old man's hand to show off his strength." Shangguan Tianhua laughed and shook his head. Although Southern Heavenly Gate was scheming and shrewd, he was still too inexperienced to play tricks in front of a top-notch big shot like him. This person thinks he can use you as a weapon, Grandpa. He thinks he's smart. In my opinion, you should teach him a lesson and let him have a long memory. Shangguan Laner said with a gloating expression. If it were some other big shot with slightly less tolerance, just because of Southern Heavenly Gate's bad intentions, in order to protect their big shot's reputation, they would not let him have an easy time. Of course, Shangguan Tianhua didn't mind at all. At his level, he already had his own way of dealing with things. He would not be angered over such a small matter. Shanghai Tianhua smiled noncommittally and said, "That's not necessary. This Southern Heavenly Gate is not someone who will give up so easily. Since I can't do it, I will definitely think of another way when I return. However, this is not something that I need to worry about." At this point, Shangguan Tianhua suddenly paused, turning to look at Shangguan Lan with a strange look on his face. "Little Lan in the past, you've never been interested in such schemes and plots. Why have you suddenly become so enthusiastic today? Are you also interested in that rogue cultivator Lin Air? Of course not. I'm obviously standing up for Grandpa Hong. Shanghai Laner quickly denied it. She did not dare to let Shanghai Tianhua know about Lin Yi. However, in her hurry, she did not notice that when Shanghai Tianhua said he was interested in the rogue cultivator Lin Air, he used the word also. Looking at the entire 3 pavilions, there were only a handful of people who could arouse the interest of the master of the soaring pavilion. It was proven that none of them were ordinary people. For example, the current master of the law enforcement hall, Ramjia. Based on Hong Zhong's character, Shanghai Tianhua believed that he would not deliberately help Lin Air to deal with Nan Tianyong. However, it was a fact that Lin Air killed Nan Tianyong in a second. An expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm was able to kill an opponent 4 levels higher than him. No matter what method he used, it was already a miracle. It was no wonder that Shanghai Tianhua, the top big shot of the North Island, would be interested in Lin Air. The next day, under the instruction of Miss Shangwan, Little Curly Bear brought the information and sneaked to Lin Yi's first cave residence at the foot of the mountain. The second of the 3 heroes of the Nan family, the senior brother in charge of the soaring pavilion, Southern Skygate, Lin Yi looked at the situation described in the letter by Shanghai Laner and could not help but be slightly surprised. He secretly sighed that Yuzha really did not give up. He had just killed Nan Tianyong and immediately pulled over an even more powerful Southern Skygate. Previously, using the true Qi bomb to kill the defenseless Nan Tianyong was already Lin Yi's limit. If it was the more powerful Southern Skygate, or if they came prepared, then other than hiding far away, there was really no other way. However, what made Lin Yi rather touched was that Hong Zhong had only met him twice, but he was so protective of him. Without saying a word, he stepped on Nan Tianyong and the 2 heroes of the Nan family, and even almost fell to the point where the soaring pavilion's master, Shanghai Tianhua, came out to pressure him. This kind of favor was really touching. Although Lin Yi also knew that Hong Zhong must have done this mainly for his own sake, and Hong Zhong really did not know the details of his identity, no matter what, he still had to accept this favor. It seemed that he would have to take care of Hong Zhong's business in the future. For Lin Yi, if he could establish a stable cooperative relationship with an experienced and reliable business tycoon like Hong Zhong, it would also be a win-win situation for both sides. In addition to the Southern Skygate's visit last night, Shanghai Laner also analyzed the reactions of the higher-ups of the Soaring Pavilion and the Law Enforcement Hall to Lin Yi in the letter. Chapter 3854. After reading her detailed analysis in the letter, Lin Yi finally had a clear idea of the current situation. He wouldn't be caught off guard when he actually encountered Yuzha and the Southern Skygate, which would cause him to reveal his weakness. Other than that, Miss Shangguan also mentioned something that Lin Yi was concerned about. It was the trump card that Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang prepared for Meng Tong. Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill? It can let Meng Tong level up? Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. This effect was even stronger than the Foundation Establishment Pill, but his instinct as a refiner told him that there was something strange about this Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill. Even the practitioners on Sky-Class Island didn't know about the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill, and Lin Yi had only been here for 2 months. Of course, he wouldn't have heard of it, but logically speaking, the stronger the effect, the stronger the side effects. The Foundation Establishment Pill was already heaven-defying, and the reason why it didn't have any side effects was because the miracle Dr. Zhang Liju had spent a lot of time researching and improving it. This Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill was even stronger than the Foundation Establishment Pill, so unless the refiner who created this pill had skills even higher than Zhang Liju, the side effects would definitely be terrifying. When he was in the common world, Lin Yi might have believed that there was someone on Sky-Class Island who was better than Zhang Liju in elixir refinement, but now that he had seen Zhang Liju's legendary status on Sky-Class Island, he had completely dispelled that thought. According to Ku by Shi Xiang, miracle Dr. Zhang Liju's skill in elixir making was unprecedented, and no one could compare to him at all. Otherwise, how could he, a practitioner from the common world with no background, be able to stand in the middle island of Sky-Class, where there were so many strong practitioners, become a top-level master? From this, one could deduce that the refiner who created the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill was at most on par with Zhang Liju, It was impossible to surpass him. From the looks of it, this group of people are already unscrupulous in order to regain their face. However, I wonder if Ming Tong knows the side effects of this. Linny shook his head speechlessly. In his opinion, Ming Tong, this idiot, was most likely kept in the dark by Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang. Otherwise, if he knew that there were severe side effects, even if he knew that he could directly level up by 1 level, he wouldn't be able to do so. Normal people wouldn't dare to joke around with their lives and future. However, even though Ming Tong had leveled up, he was still not much of a threat to Lin Yi. What surprised Linny was that since Su Lingchong had the meridian heart-shattering pill, and Ming Tong's injuries were already healed, he should have been able to use it long ago. Ming Tong, on the other hand, had been keeping a low profile for the past few rounds. Lin Yi could see that the guy was still at the early phase of foundation establishment, even though his body condition was much better than before after using some kind of medicine. There were no signs of him breaking through at all. Could it be that these people wanted to hide the meridian heart-shattering pill until the end, and then give him a surprise at the critical moment? Linny thought about it carefully. If this continued, it was quite possible. There were 6 stages in the newcomer exam, and although the challenge stage was intense, the strong ones would be able to get a lot of points. However, its influence on the rankings was far from being able to determine the outcome. There was only one thing that could have an absolute influence on the ranking. That was the final stage. Although Linny had this guess in his heart, for safety's sake, he still had to remind Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, so that they could be mentally prepared in advance, so that they wouldn't be at a disadvantage when they faced Ming Tong, who was at the early phase of foundation building. Avoiding everyone's eyes and ears, he quietly sent the little curly bear away. When Linny returned to his cave abode, he found that the cave abode at the foot of the mountain was in a hubbub. Almost all the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion had come out of their cave abodes and gathered together, discussing spiritedly. What's going on? Could it be that they're announcing some new rules for the newcomer exam? Linny could not help but be puzzled. In the past 2 months, this was the first time he had seen such a bustling place. Not only were Ming Tong and the others making a racket, it seemed that even Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were among them. When Lin Yi approached the group of people with a head full of confusion, he was stunned with just a glance. Among the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, there was actually a woman, and a pretty one at that. A woman? After coming to Heaven Island for 2 months, this was the second woman Lin Yi had seen. No, strictly speaking, this was the first woman he had seen since coming to Heaven Island. Although Shanghai Laner was cute and innocent, she was at most a girl. She did not have the temperament of a mature woman. However, this woman in front of him, after 2 months of integration, even a newcomer like Lin Yi had a general understanding of the situation in Heaven Island. Under normal circumstances, except for people like Shanghai Laner, the female cultivators of the 5 major islands in Heaven Island were generally concentrated in the West Island. This was an unwritten rule when teleporting, and it was also a rule within the local cultivator tribes. Unless it was the 2nd or 3rd generation of cultivators of each island, there were generally no exceptions. This also led to the gathering places of cultivators in the North Island, where there were often more men and less women, and it was extremely unbalanced. It was even more so in the Welcome Pavilion. If it were not for Shanghai Laner, the young lady, who would occasionally come over to show her face, the newcomers would not even think about seeing a woman all year round. The self-control of cultivators was far beyond that of ordinary people. Even many people had already become indifferent to the pleasures between men and women. Under normal circumstances, they would not think about women, but most of the cultivators were still normal people after all. It was natural instinct for the opposite sex to be attracted to each other. As the saying goes, after mixing with men for a long time, even if you see a sow, you will feel that you are handsome. What's more, the one who appeared in front of everyone now was a living woman, and she could be considered a beauty. But why would such a woman come here? When Lin Yi could not help but feel puzzled, senior brother Kubai, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongkai had already squeezed to his side. Lin Yi could not help but ask, what's going on? Could it be that a woman from a family brought her here to play? This was the most normal speculation. If it was not like Shanghai Laner who came to play, could it be that she was a new disciple of the Welcome Pavilion? Chapter 38:55. More importantly, Lin Yi could clearly see the woman's strength. She was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundational building realm. Although Lin Yi's golden finger was limited after he obtained the heavenly axiom, he could still see the levels of cultivators who were weaker than him. Putting aside the two stewards, Meng Jueguang and senior brother Ku Bai, as well as Lin Yi, who had hidden his strength, this woman could easily look down on everyone. With such strength, why would she come to the welcoming pavilion? She could directly enter the three great pavilions. However, senior brother Ku Bai's answer stunned Lin Yi. Junior brother Lin, you're wrong. This woman's name is Morongjun. She's not here to play. From today onwards, she's a newcomer to the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Huh. Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. This situation was the most impossible possibility, but he did not expect it to come true. What was going on? It had been more than 2 months since then, but a disciple was added halfway through. Moreover, it was a female disciple, and a female disciple at the peak of the early stage of the foundational building realm? I don't know why this female disciple was suddenly sent here. Anyway, this is a special case, and the higher-ups tacitly approved it. After a pause, senior brother Ku Bai mysteriously whispered to Lin Yi and the others. It's said that this woman has a powerful background. She's a distant relative of Elder Murong from the Soaring Pavilion. She's been in her hometown for a long time, but because she's quite strong, she was brought here recently. Senior brother Ku Bai's words did not dispel Lin Yi's doubts. Instead, he became even more puzzled. Since she was a relative of Elder Murong from the Soaring Pavilion, even if she was a distant relative, she could be considered a real second or third generation cultivator. With her current strength, if she wanted to join the three great pavilions, there was no need for her to go through the trouble of coming to the welcoming pavilion. Even if she really wanted to go through the motions, she should have gone to the Soaring Pavilion. Why did she come to the Blue Cloud Pavilion for no reason? There was probably something strange about this. Just as Lin Yi, senior brother Ku Bai, and the others were discussing, they heard the other newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion suddenly quiet down. Following that, they saw the crowd part to the side. This woman, who was the center of attention, walked gracefully in front of Lin Yi. Are you the Lin Yi they were talking about? Let me introduce myself. My name is Morongjun. If you don't mind, you can call me Zhenjun. Morongjun's pretty eyes were filled with lust as she extended her slender hand to Lin Yi. Gulp. The crowd couldn't help but swallow their saliva. In their hearts, they were all envious of Lin Yi's luck with women. To be able to shake hands with Morongjun was a blessing that could not be obtained in a few lifetimes. Not only was Morongjun a beauty, but she was also a powerful female cultivator. There were even well-informed people who said that her family background was unfathomable, and that she was a true third-generation cultivator. It was impossible for Morongjun not to become the center of attention when she was 3 different people. If he could gain her favor, not only would he be able to win the heart of a beauty, but he would also be able to become the son-in-law of a dragon. From then on, he would be able to reach the sky in a single bound, and he would be able to save a lot of effort. Before Lin Yi arrived, many people, including Meng Tong, tried to strike up a conversation with her. Unfortunately, Morongjun did not even look at them, let alone take the initiative to shake hands with them. However, as soon as Lin Yi showed up, Morongjun took the initiative to introduce herself. She even took the initiative to extend her hand. The difference in treatment between the two was like heaven and earth. Meng Tong and the others were heartbroken. At first, the crowd thought, since Morongjun took the initiative, Lin Yi would definitely take advantage of the situation without hesitation. He would grab her slender hand and enjoy his luck with women. But what made everyone's jaws drop was that Lin Yi didn't do anything about it. Hello, I am Lin Yi. Lin Yi nodded with his arms crossed. He had no intention of shaking hands with her and responded calmly. F***CK. There must be something wrong with this pretentious guy's brain. Didn't they say this guy is a lecher? Why is he rejecting her when she's right in front of him? Is he addicted to acting tough? Meng Tong and the others were in an uproar. All of them were surprised, and their faces were filled with schadenfreude. Fortunately, Lin Yi was sick in the head. Otherwise, if he really took the opportunity to hook up with the great beauty Morongjun, then all of them would be heartbroken. Morongjin obviously did not expect Lin Yi to react this way. She was slightly startled and chuckled awkwardly. She then retracted her hand that was reaching out to Lin Yi. Due to the scarcity of women, ever since she came to the three great pavilions, no matter where she went, she was undoubtedly the center of attention. Even in the circle of the second generation of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, she could easily attract the attention of many young masters, and this even included Su Lingchong, the young master who was extremely valuable. Originally, everything was wonderful, just when Morongjin thought it would always be wonderful, because of a party in Huayang House. Just because of a moment of anger, the situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. Not only did she lose the attention of many young masters, she also became the target of public criticism. Almost all of the young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion were ostracized. That was not all. Today, she was sent to the Welcoming Pavilion for no reason. Moreover, it was the Blue Cloud Pavilion, a place where even birds wouldn't poop. How could she endure this? Morongjin gritted her teeth in hatred when she thought of this. Back at Huayang Residence, didn't I tell you the truth that you can't bring pets? You second and third generations, in order to please that little girl, Shangguan Laner, do you have to hit me when I'm down? Do you have to be so unscrupulous? Shangguan Laner, isn't she born with a good grandfather? So what? Even if I'm not as good as her in terms of family background, but in terms of temperament, appearance, and strength, how could that little girl compare to me? Shangguan Lan, and those blind young masters, just wait and see. I'll make them pay 100-fold. When the time comes, none of you can escape. Women were the creatures that should never be provoked, especially Morongjin, a scheming and shrewd woman. Once provoked, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, even though she was ostracized by the young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion because she offended Shangguan Laner, Morongjin never thought that she would be treated coldly when she came to the Welcoming Pavilion and faced the new people in the Blue Cloud Pavilion. In fact, from Meng Jueguang to the rookies, all of them showed great enthusiasm towards this beauty. They fawned on her in every possible way, allowing her to quickly regain the feeling of being the center of attention. Chapter 3856. If it were anyone else here, Morongjin wouldn't even need to take the initiative to extend her hand. Just a simple glance from her would make them kneel down and lick her feet. No one would be as cold as Lin Yi, not even willing to extend his hand. Even though it was a little awkward, Morongjin quickly regained her composure. She said coquettishly, in the future, we'll all be newcomers to Blue Cloud Pavilion. I'm just a weak woman who has no one to rely on. Brother Lin, you must remember to take care of me. The coquettish voice seeped into their bones, and since they hadn't seen a woman in a long time, even these practitioners with strong self-control couldn't help but feel their hearts fluttering. They wanted nothing more than to be in Lin Yi's place and pull this soft beauty into their arms, taking care of her. Lin Yi's response to this was a non-committal smile. He didn't have any intentions of responding at all. This scene once again made everyone's jaws drop. If they had thought that Lin Yi was stupid and didn't know how to appreciate favors, now they didn't think that way anymore. When they recalled the rumors that Lin Yi had countless girlfriends in the secular world, the crowd could not help but think that it was not that Lin Yi did not want to bother with the beautiful woman, Morongjin. He was just acting cool out of habit and preparing to play hard to get. As high and mighty cultivators, even if it was difficult for them to gain the favor of female cultivators of the same cultivation level, their status among ordinary people was undeniable. If they really wanted to, people like them would definitely not lack women. Naturally, they had their own way of dealing with women, playing hard to get. As long as the situation was controlled well, not only could this move leave a deep impression on the other party, it was also more useful than trying to please them. However, the prerequisite for using this move was that the person himself must possess sufficient attractiveness. In the world of cultivation where the strong were revered, the person must possess sufficient strength. At the same time, the person must also possess a powerful background. Otherwise, it would only produce the opposite effect. In terms of strength, although Lin Yi's strength was not bad compared to the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was only in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. Morongjin, on the other hand, was an expert in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. She was superior. In terms of background, Lin Yi was just a grassroots newcomer in the secular world. Even if everyone present was a grassroots loose cultivator, their background and strength were much better than Lin Yi's. After all, no matter how poor they were, as local cultivators, they still had friends and relatives. Moreover, this Morong beauty was rumored to be related to Elder Morong of the Soaring Pavilion. Her background was unreachable to anyone here, let alone a weakling like Lin Yi who had come from the common world. Let's wait and see. Sooner or later, this pretentious old man will shoot himself in the foot. When that time comes, it'll be interesting when Beauty Morong steps on him. Meng Tong sneered. Beside him, Li Zhengming couldn't help but grin when he heard this. Did Boss Lin Yi really have some thoughts about this Morongjin? He wasn't sure, but at least he knew one thing. If they really fought, Boss Lin Yi would definitely trample his opponent to death in a matter of minutes. There was no doubt about this. Therefore, in his opinion, Meng Tong's self-indulgent thoughts could only be described with one word: naive. However, he obviously wouldn't say this out loud. He just cooperated with the cold sneer. Of course, the target of this sneer was not Lin Yi, but the newcomer Meng Tong. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't respond to her, Morong Zhan was a little annoyed. This guy, why didn't he take the initiative to give face? The reason why she took the initiative to express her goodwill to Lin Yi was because she saw that Lin Yi was stronger than everyone else. Moreover, the other newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion seemed to be quite afraid of him. She felt that this person was not simple and could be used. She originally thought that this kind of thing would be a piece of cake for a great beauty like her. She thought that she could easily make Lin Yi kneel under her skirt. She didn't expect that Lin Yi would be so unreasonable. He turned a blind eye to her in public twice. Did this guy think that he was a super rich young master like Su Lingqiu? Could it be that he really wanted a great beauty like her to take the initiative to throw herself at him? You're just an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator with no background. It's already a blessing that this lady is willing to look at you for a few lifetimes. And you want this beauty to throw herself at you? Bah, you're not worthy. Although she was annoyed in her heart, there were so many people watching. Moreover, this was the first time she appeared in front of everyone. Morong Zhan didn't want to lose her poise and affect her image. She had not given up yet. Even if she was inhumanely sent to Blue Cloud Pavilion as a newcomer, Morong Zhan didn't have the slightest intention of giving up. She still wanted to stay in Welcome Pavilion for a period of time. She wanted to take the opportunity to recruit a few powerful newcomers with a bright future. She wanted to prepare to deal with Shanghai Laner in the future. If she wanted to deal with Shanghai Laner, the high and mighty lady, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion would definitely not be of much use. However, they were not completely useless. When the time came, she could set up a plan to use them as cannon fodder. Because of Lin Yi's cold reaction, Morong Zhan was embarrassed and annoyed. Next to her, Meng Jueguang, the senior who was in charge, took the initiative to help her out of this predicament. All right, everyone, quiet down. Let me formally introduce everyone. Meng Jueguang pretended to be gentle and smiled at Morong Zhan. Then, he loudly introduced, from today onwards, Lady Morong is officially a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Like everyone else, she will be participating in the newcomer assessment. As for the assessment that she has already gone through, there is no need to make up for it alone. After a pause, Meng Jueguang continued, also, because the 15 caves at the foot of the mountain are already full, according to the orders of the higher-ups, we are to build a wooden house for Lady Morong as a temporary residence. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. If they said that they weren't the least bit confused about Morong Zhan's arrival, they would definitely be lying. With Morong Zhan's strength and background, if she wanted to join the 3 great pavilions, it would be a simple matter. The fact that she joined Welcome Pavilion halfway through was already strange enough. Moreover, she did not join Soaring Sky Pavilion, but Blue Cloud Pavilion. Because of this, even if she left Welcome Pavilion in the future, according to the 3 great pavilions rules, she could only become an inner disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion and not an inner disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion. The difference in treatment between the two was huge. For Morong Zhan, who was supposed to become an inner disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion, This was simply inhumane and merciless suppression. Chapter 38:57. As long as they calmed down and thought about it, they would be able to figure out that there was more to this than meets the eye. It was highly possible that Morong-jeon had offended someone important, which was why she was treated this way. Because of this, Linny had already thought about this problem. That was why he distanced himself from Morong-jeon. He did not want to get involved in the fight between these important people. However, the others did not think the same way. Morong-jeon was a beautiful woman. Even if they had all kinds of speculations, they could not help but be attracted to her. They could not control themselves. Even if Morong-jeon had offended someone important, it must be someone from the Soaring Sky Pavilion. They would be going to Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future, so it did not matter. Plus, it might even be a training experience for her elders. Looking at everyone's expressions, Meng Jueguang sighed and said, "From my personal standpoint, I also feel that this is somewhat unfair. But this is, after all, an order from the higher-ups. No one can change it. Fortunately, Lady Morong is already at the peak of the early stage of the foundational building realm. She is destined to have a bright future ahead of her. As for the newcomer assessment and the cave, I believe she will not be too concerned about it. I will have to trouble you for now." Although Meng Jueguang was pretending to sigh, half of it came from his heart. After all, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. No matter how scheming and shrewd Meng Jueguang was, he was still a hot-blooded man. The temptation of a beautiful woman like Morong-jeon was very great. Under everyone's watchful eyes, after hearing what Meng Jueguang said, Morong-jeon's face was filled with tears. However, she still pretended to be strong and said, "Senior Meng, from today onwards, I am no longer Lady Morong. I am just an ordinary newcomer to Blue Cloud Pavilion. You can just call me Junior Sister. Also, I have no problem with the newcomer assessment and the cave. Please do not worry about me." With just a few simple sentences, almost every man, including Meng Jueguang, was captivated by this woman. Compared to acting cute, a woman like her who was obviously weak but pretended to be strong was more likely to arouse a man's desire to protect her. Men could not help but feel protective towards her. This woman was really good at acting. Linny could not help but secretly pout. Although he did not know Morong-jeon, who had appeared out of nowhere, and there was no enmity between them, his instincts told him that this woman was definitely not as weak and harmless as she appeared to be. In the secular world, Linny had come into contact with all kinds of women, and he knew how to treat people, so he had a way to read people. Morong-jeon's eyebrows were very wide apart. She was no longer a virgin. Whether it was the space between her eyebrows or the way she walked, she gave off a coquettish aura. If his judgment was correct, this woman's nightlife should be frequent and chaotic. Heaven-ranked Island was not as open as the secular world. There were still a lot of ancient customs, and they were very strict about keeping a distance between men and women. Under such a background, a woman like Morong-jeon could not be considered a good person at all. Right now, Linny was wholeheartedly focused on cultivating and leveling up. He would go to Zhongdao and find Zhang Liju. He didn't have time to waste with this woman. However, what Linny didn't know was that for some narrow-minded women, his behavior of keeping a respectful distance from them was a sign of respect. That was enough to make people hate him. All right, if there's nothing urgent, then let's show our manly spirit. Come and help build a house for our junior sister Morong. Meng Jueguang called out to everyone. All right. In order to leave a good impression in front of Beauty Morong, the rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion scrambled to be the first. They were afraid of falling behind. Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and the others didn't follow the others immediately. Instead, they stayed and waited for Lin Yi's instructions. Let's go. Since we're all rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, let's go help as well. Lin Yi smiled faintly. He didn't want to interact too much with this Morong-jeon, but they were all rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Even if it was just out of consideration for his face, he had to help. Of course, with so many people scrambling to go, even if Lin Yi and the others went, they would only be there to help. Building a wooden house was just a small matter for practitioners like them. In just half an hour, under the efforts of the rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, A wooden house was erected in the empty space in front of the cave at the foot of the mountain. Although it was a little rough and the feeling of living in it wouldn't be great, apart from the spiritual energy, the requirements of a cultivator's external environment were not high, so they could make do with it. As for the spiritual energy, with Murongjan's strength at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, even the best cave at the foot of the mountain, the first cave was far from enough to satisfy her cultivation needs, let alone the small wooden house. Therefore, in theory, to Murongjan, the effects of the caves and the small wooden house were the same. They were close to zero. Of course, the small wooden house was only temporary to her. If she intended to fight in the upcoming competition, the one who would stay in the small wooden house might be an unlucky soul. Regarding this point, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples who were mesmerized by Murongjan had yet to react. All they could think of at the moment was how to win Murongjan's favor. As long as they could please Murongjan, not only would they gain the beauty's favor, but they would also have a backer. Why not? Putting aside Murongjan's powerful background, she was a true expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. With this kind of strength, she could easily defeat all the rookies of Welcome Pavilion, including Lin Yi. Even if they were suspected of living off a woman, if they could find a way to hug such a thick thigh, the situation would be wonderful. After building the wooden house for Murongjan, the rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion quickly dispersed, except for a few who wanted to please Murongjan with ulterior motives. They still had to prepare for the next round of the competition, and they still had to spend vital chi to cultivate the spiritual herb seeds. There were many things they needed to worry about, so they did not have much time to waste. As for Murongjan, a beauty who had descended from the sky, to most of them, she was merely a feast for their eyes at most. With their abilities and conditions, it was completely unrealistic for them to win the heart of the beauty. No matter how tempted they were, they still knew where they stood. Chapter 3858. There were countless examples of brothers falling out because of a woman. Although Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai had good characters, if they were to be seduced by this woman and sow discord between them, it would be hard to say what would happen next. Linny had to be on guard against this, so he had to give them a heads up. Don't worry, boss. We'll do whatever you want. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai nodded without hesitation. Admittedly, after spending so much time in the Welcome Pavilion with men, Murongjan was more or less attractive to them, but it was not to the point where they would fall for her. Needless to say, Xiao Ran had seen all kinds of fickleness in the secular world since he was young. His calmness, rationality, and self-control were unquestionable. On the other hand, although Xiao Honkai looked pure and hot-blooded, it could be seen from the way he dealt with Ming Tong during the challenge that he was a meticulous person. He was not someone who would be easily taken advantage of. Back in the cave abode, Lin Yi habitually entered the space in the jade pendant. Apart from his daily cultivation, his most important task now was to take care of the two heart-devouring exquisite grasses that had just sprouted. As these were seeds cultivated in batches by the Spirit Medicine Nursery using a special method, they belonged to the category of plants that were congenitally deficient. Furthermore, the method of instilling vital energy into them changed their growth cycle, which was a form of destruction to the spiritual medicine seeds that were already lacking in vital energy. Therefore, normally speaking, the quality of the spiritual medicine cultivated in this way was poor and could not reach the average standard. It was rare for him to obtain two heart-devouring exquisite grasses seeds, but in the end, he could only cultivate two malnourished heart-devouring exquisite grasses. This result was clearly unacceptable to Lin Yi. Fortunately, the space in the jade pendant was filled with sufficient spiritual energy. To a large extent, it made up for his congenitally deficient inferiority. Although the quality was not very good, it could still reach the average standard. What Lin Yi needed to do now was to continue taking care of these two heart-devouring exquisite grasses. Then he could start to refine the foundation-building pill. Apart from the two stalks of heart-devouring exquisite grass, Lin Yi didn't directly hand over the rest of the seedlings that had sprouted in the space of the jade pendant to exchange for points. Instead, he left them here and returned the seedlings in batches. The reason why they had to be sent in batches was because this was also to avoid arousing suspicion. After all, When the others took the seedlings back, they didn't have a unique golden finger like Lin Yi's jade space. They wouldn't be able to grow the spiritual medicine seedlings in their hands at all, so they could only hand them all over at once. If he really did that. When that time came, Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, Li Jingming, and even Zhong Pingliang from the Soaring Pavilion would hand over 10 or more seedlings at once under the background that everyone else couldn't even grow a single seed. It would be impossible not to attract attention. When that time came, if someone really wanted to investigate, not only would the secret of them cultivating the spiritual medicine seedlings be exposed, but more importantly, Zhong Pingliang and Li Jingming might also be exposed as spies. That would be troublesome. So, for the sake of safety, Lin Yi could only choose to make it a little more troublesome and let them hand over the seedlings in batches, as long as they didn't meet at the same time. Moreover, if each person hid a few seedlings, it wouldn't matter even if their survival rate was much higher than the others. Back then, the sissy manager of the spirit medicine nursery had already said that cultivating spiritual medicine seedlings not only depended on strength and skill, but also luck. If a few people had a higher survival rate, the others could only be envious. At most, they would suspect that these people had mastered some key tricks or something, but they wouldn't think too much about it. The spiritual medicine seedlings of Xiao Ran and the others. Lin Yi had them hand over the seedlings in batches. He himself had 39 seedlings other than the heart-devouring exquisite grass. He didn't hand them over in batches, but kept them in the jade space, planning to take them out at the end. When that time came, many people would be blinded, especially people like Kong Mingming, who was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Lin Yi was looking forward to it. At night, when Lin Yi was cultivating, his heart suddenly moved. Someone was touching his cave house's restriction. Looking for him at this time. Could it be that Li Zhongming had some new information? This was Lin Yi's first reaction, but when he opened the door and saw the person standing in front of him, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned. Big brother Lin, my wooden house is transparent. Can I borrow your cave house to take a bath? The weather is so hot, and my body is so sticky, it's uncomfortable. Murong Zhan was wearing thin clothes, leaning against the door, and her eyes were seductively looking at Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked at her coldly and raised his eyebrows. What is this, honey trap? I'm sorry, I don't think there's water in my cave house. Lin Yi rejected her calmly. He had to admit that Murong Zhan was quite pretty. Even though Lin Yi was used to seeing all kinds of beautiful women, he had to admit that she was one of a kind. However, not only was Lin Yi not interested in this kind of woman, but he was even more vigilant. Once he got too close to this woman, needless to say, he would be in trouble, and it would be impossible for him to avoid her. Lin Yi didn't know why this Murong Zhan was trying to seduce him like this, but there was one thing he was sure of. There was definitely something fishy going on, and this woman was definitely up to no good. Seeing that Lin Yi's reaction was as cold as during the day, Murong Zhan, who thought that she would be able to make him submit, couldn't help but be stunned again. After half a day, with her ability, it was easy for her to find out the current situation of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion. From her point of view, although Meng Tong had Meng Jueguang backing him, in terms of strength, he was still far inferior to Lin Yi's group. Summing up all the things that had happened to Lin Yi, she realized that this newcomer from the secular world was not only far stronger than the other newcomers, but his potential was also not to be underestimated. Just by relying on his own strength, he was able to make Meng Jueguang, the steward, helpless. How could this be something that an ordinary person could do? This man was not simple. This was Murong Zhan's judgment of Lin Yi after summing up the information provided by the newcomers. Because of this, after being given the cold shoulder during the day, she had to swallow her pride and take the initiative to seduce Lin Yi at night when there was no one around. Chapter 3859. Lin Yi, who seemed to be quite capable, was obviously a good choice. Moreover, Lin Yi had a grudge against Su Lingqiong, so he was naturally on her side. As for how to get Lin Yi on their side, it was an easy task for Murong Zhan. For a beauty like her, her body was the best method. Murong Zhan would never complain about having too many guests under her veil. If it was necessary, she would not even mind giving the other party a taste of sweetness, just like the current situation. From her point of view, For a man like Linny who liked to act cool, it was understandable that he was so cold to her in front of so many people during the day. If he acted like a pervert, it might damage the image he had built up previously. Now, in the dead of night, there was no one around, and she, a beautiful woman, had taken the initiative to come to him. There should be no need for him to pretend anymore. In the end, it was completely out of Morongjan's expectations. It was just the two of them, a man and a woman. She had already hinted so openly, but Linny was still pretending and did not hurry to snatch her in. Morongjan couldn't help but suspect that there was something wrong with this guy's head. Or could it be that he was sick in that aspect and was not interested in women? Otherwise, there was no reason for him to resist her temptation. Morongjan quickly calmed herself down when she saw Lin Yi looking at her coldly. She did not give up and licked her lips seductively. She said coquettishly, "If there's no water, we can go outside and get it. Brother Lin, you can't possibly bear to see a weak lady like me fetch water by herself, right? My body is sticky right now. It's really uncomfortable if I don't bathe." If it was any other newcomer in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, like Mingtong, who was simple-minded, when Morongjan said that, he would probably be impatient to get his hands on her and rush to be her subject. Unfortunately, Morongjan was not facing anyone else, but Lin Yi. Morongjan stroked his hair coquettishly as if there was no one else around. She purposely put on all sorts of seductive poses that would make any man's nose bleed. Linny couldn't help but sigh. This woman really wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. "Miss Morong, it's getting late. In addition, men and women should not touch each other. Your request is indeed somewhat inconvenient. Forgive me for being powerless. Please leave." Linny shook his head indifferently. "You." Morongjan could not help but feel angry. Her already towering chest heaved up and down. Pointing at Linny, he was speechless for a long time. Over the years, Morongjan had captured more than 10 women. She had always been extremely confident in her beauty. Moreover, she understood men very well. As long as she gave them a little sweetness, they would definitely take the bait. This trick of seduction, whether it was in her hometown or in the 3 great pavilions, had never failed her. Morongjan had always been a tried and tested woman. If she had not offended Shangguan Lan she would have been like a fish in water by now and become a famous lady in the 3 pavilions who was the center of attention, even if she was sent to the welcoming pavilion. Judging from the reactions of the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, in Morongjan's eyes, these people were nothing more than trash that she could summon at her beck and call. However, Morongjan never thought that her time-tested seduction trick would work. In front of Lin Yi from the secular world, it had no effect at all. He did not even take the initiative to throw himself at her. How could a great beauty like her endure that? No matter how slutty she was, Morongjan was still a woman in the end. When she failed to attract a man by offering her body to seduce him, it was definitely a fatal blow to her. The consequences were also extremely terrifying. Morongjan pointed at Linny for a long time in exasperation. Then, she said angrily, "Are you a man or not? Don't you know what it means to have tender feelings for the fair sex? Aren't you just a commoner from the secular world? What's there to be arrogant about? I'm giving you a chance because I'm flattering you. Otherwise, I wouldn't even bother to look at trash like you who doesn't have the strength or background." "If that's the case, then it's my honor." Linny smiled faintly, not denying it. "Isn't that so? An idiot like you who doesn't know how to flirt. I'm sure that you'll never be able to hook up with any woman in this lifetime. You can just wait to be a bachelor for the rest of your life." Morongjan paused for a moment, then added, "Even if there are, they'll at most be those commoners who have never seen the world. They're trash who can't even compare to a single toe of mine." "Then I'm really sorry. My girlfriends might not be the most beautiful, but they're more than enough compared to you, Lady Morong." Lin Yi's expression turned serious as he sneered. Initially, he wanted to pretend to be polite to Morongjan. Even if he did not want to get too close to her, there was no need to make things so bad that they were like fire and water. No matter what, Morongjan was quite strong and had a powerful background. It was best not to provoke him. However, now that Morongjan had called his girlfriends trash, Linny did not plan to pretend that he did not hear it. After all, women had always been Lin Yi's reverse scale. Well water does not interfere with river water. This was Lin Yi's original plan. Now that Morong Zhen had touched his reverse scale, there was nothing more to say. So what if you're an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm? So what if you have the support of an elder from the Soaring Sky Pavilion? If you dare to touch my reverse scale, I'll beat you to death. More than enough compared to me? Morongzhin acted as if she had just heard an earth-shattering joke. She suddenly burst into laughter and beat her chest and stamped her feet. She could not stand up straight for a long time. As for Lin Yi, he stood at the door and watched coldly. He wanted to see what this woman was planning to do next. After laughing unscrupulously for a long time, Morongzhin finally stood up straight. She pointed at Lin Yi and laughed as she shook her head. Brother Lin, I thought you were an unromantic, stupid man. It looks like I've misunderstood you. If you were really that stupid, how could you make me so happy with just one sentence? Come to think of it, I haven't heard such a funny joke in a long time. As she spoke, Morong Zhen used her slender, jade-like finger to poke Lin Yi's chest intimately. Her intention to tease him was obvious. However, Lin Yi pushed her away with one hand without the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. With a playful look on his face, he said, "Joke? I'm sorry, I only joke with my friends. Unfortunately, Miss Morong isn't one of them, so you shouldn't think too much about it." Chapter 3860. I've put down my pride and tried to be nice to you. Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being rude. I forgot to tell you that in my heart, if you can't be my friend, then you're my enemy. I won't let any of my enemies live so leisurely. Morongzhen sneered. This time, she was really angry out of humiliation. The aura of an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm poured out of her body without reservation and pressed down on Lin Yi's head. No matter how weak she pretended to be, she was still an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm. To her, dealing with Lin Yi, who was merely an expert at the early stage of the foundation building realm, was a piece of cake. Women were not to be trifled with. A woman like her, who was not broad-minded but was not weak, was even more so. I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to be my friend or my enemy? Think carefully before you answer this question. Otherwise, you'll regret it. I promise. Morongzhen said coldly. Hee, seduction didn't work. So you're trying to threaten me? This is only her first day in the Welcome Pavilion, but she can't wait to build her own force. This woman seems to be plotting something big. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh in his heart when he saw this. However, his face remained indifferent. Under the pressure of Morongzhen's aura, Lin Yi paused for a moment. Then, he replied with a normal expression, "Miss Morong, well water doesn't interfere with river water. I have no intention of being your enemy. However, if you insist on doing this, then I'll have to reluctantly do it." Hey, reluctantly do it? You're just an early stage of the foundation building realm from the secular world. Do you have the right to say such things in front of me? You're too arrogant. Morongzhen was about to attack him angrily. If he wasn't a friend, then he was an enemy. There was no third possibility. As for what Lin Yi said about not interfering with each other's business, in Morongzhen's eyes, it was a load of bullshit. If she wanted to take revenge on Shangguan Laner, she needed to accumulate strength and influence at all costs. There were only a few people who had the potential to be her cannon fodder. Among these people, people like Meng Tong were Meng Jueguang's direct subordinates, and Meng Jueguang was Su Lingchong's man. She, Morongzhen, had no way of contending against them in a short period of time. In other words, even if she lowered her status and took the initiative to seduce them, it would still be impossible for her to make Meng Tong and the others truly loyal to her. At most, she could make use of them behind young Master Su's back. But Lin Yi and the others were different. They were real grassroots. Morongzhen did not have any powerful background or backing. As long as she played some tricks, it was very possible for her to make these people worship her. If he wanted to subdue Lin Yi and his gang, the most crucial step was naturally to subdue Lin Yi. To catch a thief, one must first capture the leader. As long as he could subdue Lin Yi, his subordinates, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, would naturally be easy to deal with. Moreover, from Morong Zhan's point of view, Lin Yi was indeed the most capable and had the most potential among all the newcomers. After subduing him, if there were any opportunities in the future, perhaps he could really become a top figure. Therefore, subduing Lin Yi was a must for Morong Zhan. Even though she was treated coldly during the day, now that it was night time, she still lowered her status and took the initiative to seduce him. She decided to lower herself to seduce Lin Yi. If necessary, she wouldn't mind giving Lin Yi a taste of sweetness. After all, Morong Zhan had always been very confident in herself. Her plan was perfect, but unfortunately, everything had already become fleeting. Since seducing him did not work, she could only change her way of thinking. If the soft approach did not work, she would use the hard approach. She would use her strength to force Lin Yi to yield. In the cultivation world, the strong had always been respected. She believed that Lin Yi would fall for that too. Just as Morong Zhan was about to use her strength to subdue Lin Yi suddenly spoke. Is this really okay? If you fight without reporting it, you will be severely punished in the welcome pavilion. Lady Morong, aren't you afraid that someone will kick you when you're down? As he spoke, Lin Yi's expression was calm as usual. He did not seem to be flustered at all. It seemed like he was merely giving a casual reminder. If Morong Zhan insisted on not listening to him, he would not mind playing along with her until the end. Hearing that, Morong Zhan's aura froze. She could not help but shiver when she regained her senses. Just as Lin Yi had said, her current situation was not good. Originally, she could have become a member of the inner circle of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's second generation, but now, she was suddenly knocked down to the ground, becoming a lowly Clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer without any status. If she committed any crime at this time, she believed that those who banished her to the Clear Cloud Pavilion, in order to curry favor with Shangguan Lan, and Su Lingchong, would not mind stepping on her again, adding insult to injury. If that happened, Morong Zhan might be blacklisted by Welcome Pavilion. When that time comes, she might not even be able to enter Blue Cloud Pavilion. She would be completely cut off from the three great pavilions. That would be a real tragedy. She would never have the chance to turn the tables in her life. Thinking of this, Morong Zhan quickly withdrew her aura and glared at Lin Yi. It was all because of this arrogant and despicable bastard that I almost made a huge mistake. Just you wait, this beauty. You'll regret it. Morong Zhan said with a face full of hatred. She then turned around and left. Her seduction did not work, and she could not threaten him with force. If she continued to stay here, she would only be asking for trouble. Looking at Morong Zhan's enchanting figure, Lin Yi took a deep breath. This is ridiculous. She failed to seduce me, and now she's threatening me? If it weren't for Lin Yi killing her now, it would be too troublesome. Otherwise, she would be dead by now. Lin Yi didn't want to expose his strength before the Southern Sky Gates matter was settled, but the girl was already in his blacklist. Although there might be trouble in the future, there was nothing he could do now that things had come to this. This woman was not a good person anyway. So be it. Lin Yi had enemies all over the place. One more wouldn't make a difference. What Lin Yi did not know was that even if he did not offend Morong Zhan today, he would still end up on the opposite side of Morong Zhan and Shangguan Laner in the future. What he did now was to clarify the relationship between him and her. However, it did not matter. He would deal with the situation as it came. Lin Yi shook his head and smiled. He then entered the space inside the jade pendant and continued to cultivate as if nothing had happened. Taking advantage of the fact that the heart-devouring exquisite herb seedling had yet to mature, Lin Yi needed to stabilize his cultivation base at the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm. He also needed to strengthen his foundation as much as possible in preparation for his breakthrough. Chapter 3861. Even though Lin Yi had consumed a foundation-building pill that had no side effects, if he did not cultivate diligently, it would still cause his strength to be unstable. After all, there was a huge difference between experts of the same level. The reason why Lin Yi was so far ahead was because of his hard work. While Lin Yi was cultivating diligently in the space within the jade pendant, accumulating his foundation for his next breakthrough, what he did not know was that the two most troublesome enemies he was facing had met. After being snubbed at the Flower Mist residence, Just as Shangguan Tianhua had predicted, the Southern Heaven Gate did not give up just like that. Although there were not many important figures that could help him put pressure on Hongzhong, Shangguan Tianhua was not the only one in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. For example, one of the members of the Elders' Council of the Three Great Pavilions, the third elder of the Soaring Pavilion, Su Yuanjing, also had the ability to do so. This time, the Southern Sky Gate did not visit Su Yuanjing alone like he did with Shanghai Tianhua. After all, Su Yuanjing was different from Shanghai Tianhua. Although he was also one of the few big shots in the Soaring Pavilion, he was only the third elder, not the pavilion master. Shanghai Tianhua was undoubtedly the leader of the Soaring Pavilion. If the Southern Sky Gate visited him, no one would be able to find any fault with him. However, if he visited Su Yuanjing alone, it would be easy for people to think that he was siding with someone else. However, this did not stop him from asking for help from Su Yuanjing, the third elder of the Soaring Pavilion, because Su Yuanjing had a well-known spokesperson, his grandson, Su Lingchong. Through young Master Su Lingchong's words, the South Heaven Gate could also achieve its goal without taking any unnecessary risks. The place where the Southern Sky Gate and Su Lingchong had agreed to meet. It was the #1 restaurant in the Soaring Pavilion, the Hualan Residence. Young Master Su, aren't you overestimating the Southern Sky Gate by spending so much money to invite him to a banquet? The young master sitting next to Su Lingchong asked in confusion. This person was called Lu Tianyu, the same as Su Lingchong. He was the grandson of a powerful elder in the Soaring Pavilion. However, his grandfather was ranked below Su Yuanj. According to the rules of the second generation, his status was slightly lower than Su Lingchong's. He had an extremely close relationship with Su Lingchong. The relationship between the two of them was also extremely deep. Within the circle, they were Su Lingchong's most reliable and most reliant subordinates. Basically, wherever Su Lingchong was around, he was the real second in command. As for people like Kong Mingming and Meng Jueguang, who were Su Lingchong's new underlings, Su Lingchong's subordinates, their statuses were far below his, and they could not be compared. Tianyu, what do you think my intention is by inviting the South Heaven Gate to a feast? Su Lingchong asked with a profound look. Isn't this the guy who sent you a message, asking you to help pass a message to the third elder? Lu Tianyu might be Su Lingchong's loyal follower, and his strength and family background were also not bad. But this young master never liked to use his brain. Su Lingchong couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. He asked this young master to help bring a message, so he should be the one to treat me to a meal. Why should this young master spend so much money to entertain him? This young master is not sick in the head. Then, why is this? Lu Tianyu scratched his head in confusion. The reason is simple. He's the eldest senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, while I'm the second senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. I'm ranked below him. Su Lingchong said with a profound smile. So what? You're treating him like this just because you're ranked below him? With young Master Su's background, isn't it only a matter of time for you to step on him? Previously, your strength was slightly weaker, so it's not a big deal to let him be the eldest senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. However, now that young Master Su has also reached the peak foundation establishment realm, what's there to be afraid of? Lu Tianyu was even more confused. 2 months ago, when young Master Su went to welcome the newcomers as the envoy of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he was only at the peak late foundation stage. However, after 2 months, with the help of various pills, he had reached the peak foundation establishment stage. He was only a step away from the golden core stage, just like the South Heaven Gate's eldest senior brother who was in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Hearing Lu Tianyu's doubt, Su Lingchong couldn't help but laugh. Tianyu, aren't you very clear about it? I'll be frank with you. The reason I invited the Southern Heaven Gate to a feast today is to tell him that I'm now an expert at the peak foundation establishment realm. It's time for him to give up his position as the eldest senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. I see. I knew it. Our young Master Su isn't the kind of person to let others take advantage of him. There's a deeper meaning to it. Lu Tianyu burst out laughing, but then frowned and said, however, that Southern Heaven Gate does have some background. Would he really give up his position just because young Master Su said that? Humph, we'll have to see if he knows what's good for him. It's better to be polite before resorting to force. Today's feast is just a greeting. There's still more to come. Su Lingchong harumphed coldly. Even young Master Su was slightly afraid of the background of the three heroes of the Nan clan. Unless he had no other choice, he didn't want to become enemies with the three heroes of the Nan clan. However, as a cultivator, his own interests came first. If the three heroes of the Nan clan were so stupid as to block his path, then Su Lingchong didn't mind paying a small price to trample on them. You guys are always scheming and scheming. I'm sick of it. Anyway, when the time comes, I'll do whatever young Master Su tells me. Lu Tianyu scratched his head as if he had a headache. Then, his expression changed and he said excitedly, "Let's not talk about these troublesome things. Young Master Su, let me tell you something fun." "What's fun?" Su Lingchong raised his eyebrows in surprise. When these young masters gathered together, they rarely did anything serious. Basically, they just had all sorts of fun. Lu Tianyu, this guy, was the one who liked to play around the most. Murong Zhan, that blind slut, was trampled all the way to the new welcoming pavilion by me. Not only that, I even made her a new disciple of the Clear Cloud Pavilion. Even if she comes out from the new welcoming pavilion, she can only go to the Clear Cloud Pavilion, that kind of trash shelter. Young Master Su, don't you think that's fun? Lu Tianyu said with a smug smile. Chapter 3862. Ever since Murong Zhan arrived at the three great pavilions, she had been trying her best to attract the attention of the young masters from the soaring pavilion, especially Su Lingchong, who was an extremely important young master. However, the sad thing was that although Su Lingchong had shown some interest in her, he had never truly taken her seriously. He did not even remember her name. The one that scolded Lady Shangguan last time? Young Master Su, did you forget? Lu Tianyu blurted out in shock. He had purposely tried to punish Murong Zhan to please Su Lingchong. If Su Lingchong had no impression of the woman, it would be too boring. Oh, it's her. Su Lingchong nodded as he collected his thoughts. He was still not interested. With his status and background, a mere Murong Zhan was not worthy of his attention. However, when he recalled how she had scolded Shangguan Laner, he calmly agreed, "That's good. Let her be. Out of sight, out of mind." As for continuing to deal with Murong Zhan, Su Lingchong had no intention of doing so at all, especially since this person was related to Elder Murong. Su Lingchong did not want to do so. Fine. I thought you would at least be happy about it. Since you're not interested, forget it. Lu Tianyu shrugged in disappointment. He had no grudge against Murong Zhan. He was merely trying to please Su Lingchong, which was why he had decided to punish Murong Zhan. Now that young Master Su was not interested, it was pointless. With Murong Zhan's indirect kinship with Elder Murong, with big shots like eldest Miss Shangguan and young Master Su standing in front of him, no matter how hard he trampled on Murong Zhan, it was unlikely that Elder Murong would step forward to protect him. However, he was still an elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Lu Tianyu was not stupid enough to provoke him for no reason. Initially, he had prepared a lot of tricks, but now, the woman had unknowingly dodged a bullet. As Su Lingchong and Lu Tianyu were chatting, the door to the private room was suddenly pushed open, followed by a deep voice. "It seems like I'm late, young Master Su." "Hee, we're early. It's been a while. How are you, senior brother?" Su Lingchong smiled and gestured for the South Heaven Gate to take his seat. Southern Heavenly Gate and Yuzha exchanged glances with one another. After nodding at Lu Tianyu, they sat down opposite Su Lingchong and Yuzha. This time, they were not paying a visit to a top expert like Shanghai Tianhua, so there was no need for them to be too nervous. The reason why the Southern Heaven Gate brought Yuzha along was because they were planning to use Su Lingchong to pressure Hongzhong, while trying to find Lin Air through other means. According to Yuzha's deduction, this Lin Air was very likely related to Welcoming Pavilion. Welcoming Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng was Su Yuanjing's direct subordinate. If they wanted to do something in Welcoming Pavilion privately, it would be impossible without young Master Su's approval. Southern Heavenly Gate looked at the luxurious feast on the table, which was overflowing with spiritual energy. After taking a seat, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "I'm the one who asked for young Master Su's help this time. Yet young Master Su treats me so generously. I'm really flattered." Even though the Southern Heavenly Gate was the eldest senior brother in charge of the soaring sky pavilion, it was difficult for him to eat such a luxurious feast that cost thousands of spiritual jades. It's only right. You're the eldest senior brother, so as your junior brothers, we should be more respectful to you. This way, when the time comes, we'll be able to ask for your help, isn't that right? Su Lingchong smiled. Young Master Su, you seem to be implying something? Southern Heavenly Gate frowned slightly. Of course not, eldest senior brother, you're overthinking it. I'm sincerely looking forward to eldest senior brother's promotion, Su Lingchong said in a seemingly casual manner. After hearing this, Southern Heavenly Gate's eyes flickered. He was a smart man, so he could roughly guess what Su Lingchong was trying to say. He had long heard that Su Lingchong's strength had made a breakthrough recently and had become a Foundation Establishment realm expert who was on par with him. Now, it seemed like Su Lingchong could no longer hold back his loneliness and was preparing to replace him. Although Southern Skygate had always been confident in its own strength, it didn't have a strong background in the North Island. If Su Lingchong was determined to win, it would be hard to say if he could keep his current position as the senior brother in charge of the soaring sky pavilion if he used all his means. Young Master Su, you must be joking. I don't dare to think about promotion. I'm planning to stay in this position for a few more years to lay a good foundation for the future. Southern Heavenly Gate replied calmly. In the three great pavilions, no matter how strong the background was, personal strength was indispensable. Without sufficient strength, one would not be able to sit in the corresponding position. With Southern Heavenly Gate's current strength in the Foundation Establishment realm, although there was still room for improvement on the surface, the position of the eldest senior brother in charge of the soaring sky pavilion was definitely the hottest key position at this stage. Even if he could be transferred to some seemingly more prominent position, he would be demoted on the surface. Therefore, unless he was forced to, or he could aim for a higher position such as a direct disciple or a senior brother in charge, Southern Heavenly Gate would never take the initiative to retreat. If they really fought, the three heroes of the Nan family would not be so easily provoked. The so-called direct senior brother in charge was the senior brother in charge of the disciples in the Gold Core stage who had officially been apprenticed. However, that position, not to mention him, who had not reached the Gold Core stage, even those in the peak Gold Core stage would have to fight for it with their background. Moreover, if he was in the Gold Core stage, he would have been apprenticed to the Inner Gate long ago and become an elder's nominal disciple. Then, he would be a person who could shake the whole North Island with a stomp of his foot. The direct disciple of an elder was a world of difference from him, the eldest senior brother in charge. In the cultivation world, the direct disciple was almost the same as the son or grandson. If he could successfully apprentice, then he could be said to be the second or third generation of cultivation. Even if he wasn't as prominent as Su Lingchong, he would still be someone who had the ability to attend all kinds of upper-class banquets. And if he could be apprenticed to Shanghai Tianhua, then he would be almost the same as Shanghai Laner. It wouldn't even be a problem for him to step on Su Lingchong. However, Shanghai Tianhua rarely accepted disciples. Ramjia could be considered as one of his nominal disciples. Of course, he was only nominal and not a direct disciple. However, was it that easy to reach the Gold Core stage? Before reaching the Gold Core stage, his position was still very useful. As for the so-called apprenticeship in the Foundation Establishment stage, such as Yu Jia and Nan Tianyong, it was actually just a nominal relationship. It was similar to the mortal world recognizing each other as their godparents. In reality, the three great pavilions did not officially recognize it, but they would not stop it either. It was normal for cultivators to form cliques. Chapter 38-63. All right. The Southern Skygate nodded in a deep voice. He was very clear that Su Lingchong was only greeting him today. If he was sensible and took the initiative to give up, then perhaps he would be able to obtain some benefits. But if he wasn't sensible, then what awaited him next would probably not be anything good. Suppressing his unhappiness, the Southern Skygate calmly explained the situation to Su Lingchong. His words were no different than when he was talking to Shanghai Tianhua. The only difference was the tone. Pressuring Hong Zhong of the Hong Merchant Guild? All right, This young master will pass on these words to grandfather without changing a single word. However, whether or not he will agree to help is not something that you and I can decide. Eldest senior brother, you understand as well, right? Su Lingchong had a playful expression as he curled his lips. Of course, this matter is up to the third elder. The Southern Sky Gate expressionlessly nodded. For the sake of the eldest senior brother position in the soaring pavilion, this eldest young master Su had already begun to pressure him. He had now completely realized that there was no such thing as a good feast. Eldest young master Su had prepared a feast at Hongmin for him today. Then, apart from this matter, does eldest senior brother have any other matters that you need help with? I would be more than happy to oblige. Su Lingchong pretended to be polite. As long as the Southern Sky Gate asked him for more things, it would mean that he would have more leverage over them, which would increase his chances of forcing them to lower their heads. The Southern Sky Gate gave Yuzha a look. Yuzha immediately nodded and said, "Young Master Su, there's one more thing I need your help with. It's the same thing from last time. We want to know if Lin Air is hiding in the welcoming pavilion." Lin Air? Didn't I bring you to see him last time? Su Lingchong frowned. Last time, he thought the Lin Air this guy was looking for was Lin Yi. He thought it would be less troublesome to get someone else to do the dirty work. However, it turned out to be a complete waste of effort. Young Master Su, the newcomer from the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi, that you brought me to see last time is indeed not Lin Air. However, this doesn't eliminate the suspicion of others, especially those newcomers from Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Secrets Pavilion, Yuzha answered. Last time, when he was appraising Lin Yi, he also took the opportunity to observe the other new disciples of the Clear Cloud Pavilion, but none of them matched Lin Yi's description. Initially, he planned to observe the new disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Pavilion as well, but he didn't expect that after Hu Yunfeng brought him away, she would immediately turn hostile and kick him out. Now that he thought about it, it was probably because young Master Su was unhappy that he had made a wasted trip. Hu Yunfeng was observant, and in order to curry favor with young Master Su, he naturally wouldn't be nice to him. After eliminating the suspicion of the newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the newcomers from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion also became a lot more suspicious. Although the old men did not seem very likely, there were exceptions. You mean, you want to go to the Welcoming Pavilion to investigate again? Su Lingchong looked a little impatient. Since Lin Yi was not the Lin Air that this guy mentioned, then this kind of thing did not benefit him at all. He did not have the patience to continue wasting time with a small character like Yuzha. That's right, this matter is very important to us. Please help us, young Master Su. Yuzha looked sincere. He loudly requested. If that's the case, Su Lingchong looked at the expressionless Southern Sky Gate, then said, since eldest senior brother has appeared, this young master will definitely help you with this small matter. This young master will write a letter to Hu Yunfeng. After you go there, ask him to try his best to cooperate with you. Also, you can ask Kong Mingming for help. He should have a better understanding of the newcomers. Thank you, young Master Su. Yuzha hurriedly said gratefully. Southern Sky Gate stood up and cupped his hands towards Su Lingchong. He cupped his hands towards Su Lingchong and said, since the discussion is over, if young Master Su has nothing else, then I will take my leave first. Eldest senior brother, take care. I won't see you out. Su Lingchong nodded calmly. Seeing that Southern Sky Gate and Yuzha left, Lu Tianyu, who was at the side, said, why do I feel that Southern Sky Gate is stubborn and doesn't want to give in to you, young Master Su? Su Lingchong snorted. He had expected this. No matter what, he is one of the 3 heroes of the Nan family. He has some background in Middle Island. He won't give up such an important position like the eldest senior brother supervisor so easily. I'm just greeting him today. Next, I will teach him a lesson. I believe he is a smart man. What if this guy doesn't know what's good for him? Lu Tianyu asked curiously. Although Su Lingchong was the young master of the North Island, Southern Sky Gate was not weak after all. He was strong enough, and above him was the leader of the 3 heroes of the Nan family. He even had a background in Middle Island. If the two of them really fought, it would be like Mars colliding with Earth. Doesn't know what's good for him? Then I will beat him up until he knows what's good for him. The position of the eldest senior brother supervisor is very important to my future development. Even if I have to pay a huge price for it, I will not hesitate. Su Lingqiong was determined to get it. Haha, then I really hope that Southern Skygate will be more strong-willed. Our soaring sky pavilion hasn't had a good time for a long time. Lu Tianyu laughed heartlessly. Looking at this guy's desire for the world to be in chaos, Su Lingqiong shook his head with a bitter smile. If Lu Tianyu was not his only brother in Soaring Sky Pavilion, he would have killed him long ago. However, this guy was just being sarcastic. If young Master Su really wanted to fight to the death with the three heroes of the Nan family, Lu Tianyu would definitely not stand idly by. No matter what, he was still a young master. If this guy really wanted to get serious, he was definitely not easy to deal with. After coming out from Huayang residence, Southern Sky Gate's expression was extremely dark. He had initially asked Su Lingqiong to pass on a message, but he had been led by the nose by Su Lingqiong, as if there was a huge mountain on his shoulders. Although Southern Sky Gate did not show any signs of weakness in front of Su Lingqiong, young Master Su's influence in the Soaring Sky Pavilion was undeniable. Now that he had his eyes on the position of the eldest senior brother supervisor, it would be a lie to say that he did not feel pressured. Martial Uncle, when are we going to the newcomer welcoming pavilion? Yuzha asked. I don't have much time to waste, let's go now. Southern Skygate made a prompt decision. Southern Skygate and Yuzha immediately went to the newcomer welcoming pavilion. When they arrived, it was already noon, and it just so happened that there was a newcomer challenge today. After receiving Su Lingqiong's handwritten letter, Hu Yunfeng did not make things difficult for Yuzha this time. She nodded her head, indicating that he could do as he pleased. After all, even without young Master Su's handwritten letter, Yuzha still had the Southern Skygate standing beside him. Chapter 3864. There will be a newcomer challenge later in the afternoon. It'll be convenient for you two to observe, but I have to say something first. If you two really find Lin Air, it's best to ask the disciplinary hall to step in. Don't make things difficult for me, Hu Yunfeng warned solemnly. If this Lin Air was really a member of the Welcome Pavilion, then no matter how deep the hatred between him and the Southern Skygate and Yuzha was, as the pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Unless the disciplinary hall stepped in, then they could take him away. Pavilion Master Hu, don't worry. I know what I can do and what I can't. Southern Skygate nodded. All right, I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first. If you two have any questions, feel free to ask Deacon Kong. Before Hu Yunfeng left, she called Kong Xiaoming over to greet the two. Thanks to Master Su Lingqiong's care, Kong Xiaoming was doing quite well in the welcoming pavilion. Even in the newcomers challenge competition, which was his weakest point as an alchemist, he was able to handle it with ease because he was ahead of the other newcomers by a large margin. Among all the newcomers in the Rising Sky Pavilion, only Zhong Pingliang was stronger than Kong Mingming, and Zhong Pingliang couldn't make things difficult for Kong Mingming under Su Lingqiong's orders, so Kong Mingming was doing quite well. Maybe after a while, the other newcomers in the Rising Sky Pavilion would ask for elixirs through their own channels, and they would be able to break through to Foundation establishment very soon. At that time, even with Master Su's care, Kong Mingming might not be able to stand out like he was now. But at least for now, he, Kong Mingming, was in charge. After listening to Southern Skygate and Yuzha's intentions, Kong Mingming suddenly rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, Senior brother Yu, are you sure that Lin Yi isn't the Lin Air you're looking for? Of course. Why do you ask, Deacon Kong? Yuzha asked curiously. Kong Xiaoming pretended to be profound. Actually, I've heard about Senior Nantianyong. Actually, the technique that Lin Air used. It is very similar to a move that this little brother knows. I wonder if the two of you have heard of the pill firebomb that only an alchemist can use? Coincidentally, Lin Yi is an alchemist. Pill flame bomb? The Southern Skygate and Yu Zhe were both stunned. Although they had never seen this martial skill with their own eyes, as the name suggested, this was a technique that used pill fire. It was not strange that only alchemists could use it. However, alchemists were notoriously weak in actual combat. How could a single Dan firebomb be so powerful that it could instantly kill Nantianyong? an expert at the peak of the late stage of the foundation establishment stage. Seeing that the two of them were still hesitant, Kong Ming hurriedly continued, "Don't doubt me. The alchemic firebomb is not very useful in a real battle, but its power is very shocking. If it had been charged for a long enough time, it would not be strange for it to kill anyone." Is this true? The Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhai looked at each other. This characteristic that Kong Ming described was quite consistent with Lin Yi's actions that day. Don't forget that before coming out to deal with Nan Tianyong, this guy purposely stayed at the Hong Merchant Guild for as long as 2 hours. Perhaps he was holding back this so-called pill flame bomb. If this little brother dares to lie, may the heavens and earth destroy me, Kong Ming vowed. His intentions were self-evident from his eagerness and enthusiasm. It was to pour dirty water on Lin Yi. Whether or not Lin Yi was the Lin Yi that the two of them were looking for, he didn't know. But even if Lin Yi wasn't, Kong Ming would still think of a way to push the blame onto Lin Yi. Anyway, to him, even if he failed, he wouldn't lose anything. But what if the two of them believed his words and killed Lin Yi with one palm without distinguishing between right and wrong? Wouldn't that be worth it? Kong Ming had already made such a vow. If the Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhai still didn't believe him, it wouldn't make sense. Besides, what this guy said did make sense. Even if Yu Zhai had previously confirmed that Lin Yi's appearance was completely different from Lin Yi's, he still had to confirm it just in case. There was still some time before the challenge. The Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhai decided to test Lin Yi now. After all, if they waited until the challenge began and all the rookies were gathered together, it wouldn't be easy for them to test Lin Yi under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Of course, Kong Ming couldn't ask for more when the two of them suggested this idea. He immediately led them to the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain where Lin Yi was. Then, before the two of them took action, he took the initiative to leave. With the importance the 3 pavilions placed on rookies, anyone who attacked a rookie without permission would be severely punished. Furthermore, Kong Ming didn't know how severe Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhai would be. If he accidentally killed Lin Yi, it might cause a commotion. Although Kong Ming was happy to see this result, if he was present, he might be implicated and bear the responsibility. It was best to leave as soon as possible. After all, he had successfully placed the blame on Lin Yi. Whether he would be beaten up or killed would depend on Lin Yi's luck. Anyway, Lin Yi, that pretentious bastard, was definitely going to suffer today. You do it. Southern Sky Gate lifted his chin at Yu Zhai, indicating for Yu Zhai to make a move. Yu Zhai's face immediately turned awkward. Attacking a rookie from the welcoming pavilion without permission was not a light crime if this matter were to blow up. Furthermore, they were only suspecting Lin Yi. They were far from confirming it. If they were to test him rashly, wouldn't the price be too high? Southern Sky Gate could see Yu Zhai's dilemma and immediately said, "I'll bear the consequences for you. Hurry up, don't waste time." At this moment, there was no one around. However, if they waited for a while longer, when the rookie challenge was about to begin, the other rookies would probably walk out of the cave abode and gather. When that happened, there would be no chance to test him. Without a choice, Yu Zhai could only summon up his courage and touch the restriction of the first cave at the foot of the mountain. A moment later, Lin Yi opened the door and couldn't help but be stunned when he saw Yu Zhai standing in front of him. Could it be that my identity was exposed? Lin Yi's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. This was his first reaction, but then he felt that it was a little strange. Even if this guy recognized him as Lin Air, with his little strength, would he dare to come looking for trouble so openly? Even if the Southern Sky Gate personally came, he wouldn't dare to attack him in broad daylight, let alone a mere middle-stage foundation establishment stage inner disciple, right? Daring to attack a rookie from the welcoming pavilion in the cave abode of a rookie, the disciplinary hall would be the first to punish him. Chapter 3865. At the same time that Lin Yi was in a daze, Yu Zhai was also in a daze. In the instant that the door opened, this Lin Yi really did look a bit similar to the Lin Second in his memories. However, the similarity was only in his stature and temperament. His face was completely different. After staring blankly for a moment, the two of them came to their senses at the same time. Lin Yi immediately said warily, What business do you have with me? Lin Yi purposefully asked in a very vague manner. He wanted to test whether or not the other party had seen through his identity. Also, what was he planning by suddenly appearing here today? Yuzha sized up Lin Yi. Just now, in his days, Lin Yi did look a bit similar to the Lin second he was looking for. This discovery made him overjoyed. But now that he was staring at this completely different face, the more he looked, the more he felt that it didn't look the same. This made him rather confused. Could it be that because he had been too excited just now, it was all just an illusion? Yuzha felt a bit disappointed. But whether or not it was true, just looking wasn't enough. He had to see the results of his test. Come with me. If you don't want to come, you can try. Yuzha said in a low voice, then turned and left. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. This guy was just as he remembered. He really was crafty and difficult to deal with. He had wanted to test him, but he had thrown out such a brainless sentence. He couldn't get any useful information out of him. But why did this feel a bit like the situation in a school in the mortal world, where the senior students would call out the junior students to teach them a lesson? Looking at Yuzha's back, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He followed without hesitation. It didn't matter if the other recognized him or not. Facing a mere Yuzha, there was nothing to be afraid of. For the sake of the star inkstone, it wasn't just Yuzha who had racked his brains to find him. How could Lin Yi not want to find a chance to silence him, even though it seemed a bit risky? But there was no reason for Lin Yi to let go of an opportunity that had been delivered to his doorstep. He still had a fatal weakness in his hands. Not to mention the fact that Yuzha was alone. Even if he called the southern heavenly gate over and used this weakness at a critical moment, he would definitely be able to protect himself. Silently following behind Yuzha, the two of them walked for 2 miles. They walked to the foot of the mountain where the other rookies would not notice for a short period of time before stopping. You can tell me now, can you? What do you need from me? Lin Yi looked a little nervous. Of course, this was all an act. On the surface, he was just an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator at the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Suddenly being called out by Yuzha for no rhyme or reason, it would be abnormal if he wasn't nervous at all. What is it? Don't you know what you've done? Yuzha laughed coldly. He knew that the southern heavenly gate was definitely watching from the side, so he didn't dare mention the word star inkstone at all. He might as well use words to trick Lin Yi. Huh? What did I do? Lin Yi's face was full of confusion. Then, as if he had suddenly realized something, he said, Could it be that you were called over by Meng Juiguang to deal with me? Last time, Yuzha had appeared with Su Lingchong and the others. This was something that anyone could see. So when Lin Yi asked this question, from the perspective of a normal Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, it wasn't out of place at all. Meng Juiguang? What kind of nonsense is that? Yuzha was instantly stunned. He didn't know about the conflict between Lin Yi and Meng Juiguang, but last time, when Meng Juiguang introduced Lin Yi to him, he really didn't say anything nice. The two sides didn't get along. This was something that was obvious. Come to think of it, he, Yuzha, was a dignified inner sect disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Moreover, he was a middle-stage foundation establishment expert. That Meng Juiguang was only a new manager from Blue Cloud Pavilion. What ability did he have to trouble Yuzha to personally help him? Didn't Meng Juiguang ask you to come? Then why did you call me out? Lin Yi pretended to be surprised. Asked by Lin Yi, Yuzha was a little hesitant. If he had been able to use his words to trick the other party into revealing some clues, he would not have felt any psychological pressure. However, judging from the other party's reaction, there were no flaws. He was just an ordinary Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer. This was going to be difficult. After all, from Yuzha's point of view, even if what Kang Mingming said was true, even if this Lin Yi was really an alchemist and knew how to make the pill firebomb, the possibility of this guy being Lin Air was already very small. For this small possibility, was it worth it to take such a huge risk and attack a newcomer from Welcoming Sky Pavilion? As Yuzha was hesitating, the South Heaven Gate's voice suddenly appeared in his ears. Tell the kid that you're going to kill him. Then, don't waste your time talking to him. Attack him right away, and watch his reaction carefully. Yuzha was shocked and subconsciously looked around. After he came back to his senses, he forcefully restrained this impulse. The southern heavenly gate was not in his line of sight. The reason why he could hear this sound was because he had used the 1,000 Li true qi technique. Of course, although it was said to be 1,000 Li, the actual effect could not be so exaggerated. However, a few Li was not a problem. Also, this technique had an advantage. After locking onto the target, only the target could hear the sound, but the surrounding people would not hear it, even if they were less than 3 meters away from the target. However, Southern Skygate had forgotten one thing. Even if Lin Yi could not hear the words he transmitted to Yu Jie, with the distance between Lin Yi and Yu Jie, Lin Yi's perceptive ability could more or less detect a trace of a ripple. Of course, it could not be said that he had forgotten. A normal cultivator's perceptive ability would not be as strong as Lin Yi's. Furthermore, Yu Jie's subconscious reaction of turning his head was already an absolute flaw in Lin Yi's eyes. It was just enough to prove it with the strange ripple that he had just captured. As expected, there was someone else. Lin Yi instantly made a judgment. It was very easy to determine that this person was most likely the second of the 3 Nan brothers mentioned in Shangguan Laner's letter, Southern Skygate. When he first saw Yu Jie, Lin Yi had this suspicion. After all, Yu Jie was only a middle-stage foundation establishment inner disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion. It was very suspicious that he dared to cause trouble for a newcomer from welcoming Sky Pavilion in broad daylight. However, if there was a Southern Skygate behind him, then it would not be strange at all. Chapter 3866. As he finished speaking, Yu Jie didn't give Lin Yi any chance to react. Sword Qi instantly gathered in his hand, and he used the 21st form of the fatal consecutive sword. To a normal early-stage foundation establishment expert, this move was enough to kill him. Lin Yi was shocked. Although he had sensed the existence of the Southern Skygate, he had no idea what the Southern Skygate had said to Yu Jie, who knew that Yu Jie would suddenly attack him like a madman, and it seemed like he really wanted to kill him. Knowing that there was an expert like the Southern Skygate watching from afar, Lin Yi had a hard time figuring out how to deal with it. If it was just facing Yu Jie, Lin Yi wouldn't be in a difficult position. He had a high chance of winning in a one-on-one fight. Even if his identity was exposed, it didn't matter. After all, even if he couldn't kill him, he still had a fatal weakness in his hands. But now, Lin Yi didn't dare to expose his identity. Once he confirmed that Lin Yi was the second Lin they were looking for, who knew if the Southern Skygate would jump out and slap him to death, Lin Yi didn't have the chance to condense a super true Qi bomb, so he had no way of dealing with the Southern Skygate, a peak foundation establishment expert. If it really came to that, Lin Yi could only reveal Yu Jie's fatal weakness of murdering his master. But if that happened, Yu Jie, the rebellious disciple, would definitely die. But whether or not Lin Yi could survive would depend on the Southern Skygate. Maybe the Southern Skygate would let him go, or maybe the Southern Skygate would take care of him as well. Life or death, it all depended on the other party's decision. Plus, the Southern Skygate would also be suspicious. Where did he get the video? Why was he there? Lin Yi's reaction wasn't slow. The moment Yu Jie made his move, he made a decision. Continue pretending. Since Yu Jie made his move, he just had to dodge. Unless he really had no other choice. Otherwise, for Lin Yi, if he were to use his true strength at this time and expose his identity, things would be really troublesome. Relying on his instincts, Lin Yi narrowly avoided Yu Jie's swift and fierce sword energy, his figure appearing to be rather strained. However, after Yu Jie's attack missed, he did not give up. He immediately raised his hand and used the 21st form of the fatal chain sword. This time, Lin Yi was forced into an extremely sorry state. Although he successfully dodged the attack once again, his right arm was scratched by the sword energy that brushed past him. It reflected a bright red blood stain. Fortunately, he dodged fast enough and was only slightly scratched. Otherwise, his entire right arm would have been cut off. This was the awkward situation that Lin Yi was facing at the moment. It was not difficult to make the decision to continue acting, but it was extremely difficult to actually do it. If he didn't want to expose his identity in front of Yu Jie, he couldn't use any of the martial techniques that he used in front of him before. Frenzied Fire 8 Trigrams Palm, Frenzied Fire Fist, Butterfly Subtle Steps. These were the martial techniques that Lin Yi was most familiar with. Otherwise, he would be immediately seen through by Yu Jie. This was the most difficult part. Facing Yu Jie, a middle-stage foundational establishment stage expert, not only did Lin Yi reveal his true strength of the early-stage foundational establishment stage, he couldn't even use all of the martial techniques that he was proficient in. Falling into such a sorry state, it was easy to imagine. Fortunately, although Yu Jie had killing intent, he did not use his true strength. For example, if he was only using the 21st form of the fatal consecutive sword, although Lin Yi was having a hard time dealing with it, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't hold on. After 2 to 3 exchanges, he saw that although Lin Yi was doing his best to dodge and maneuver, his 21st form of the fatal chain sword still left several wounds on his body. However, Yu Jie's killing intent weakened a lot when his own fatal consecutive sword 21 forms left several wounds on his body. At least, from the performance of these few exchanges, this Lin Yi and the Lin heir he was looking for were two completely different people. Words could lie, even looks could lie, but once they really fought, especially when facing the threat of death, fighting style wouldn't lie. Even if one wanted to purposely hide their martial techniques, when facing danger, the body would subconsciously react. This was an instinct that couldn't be controlled. And the stronger the cultivator, the stronger this self-preservation ability was. This was also why the stronger the expert, the harder it was to be ambushed and killed. Because even if one numbed their will, it was very difficult to fool their self-preservation instincts. This was originally a good thing, but for the current Lin Yi, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. Because if this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. In reality, this was indeed the case. After just a few exchanges, Lin Yi already couldn't control the restless physical energy in his body. If Yu Jie persisted for a while longer, he might not be able to control himself. But at this time, Yu Jie suddenly stopped. I have no grievances with you. Why do you want to kill me? Don't you know what the crime of attacking a newcomer of the welcoming pavilion is? Lin Yi panted in a sorry state. There was an element of pretense here, but he really had a hard time pretending just now, and there were many wounds on his body. This wasn't fake. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to live, then try using your pill firebomb. I'll give you this chance. Yu Jie said with a cold expression. Pill firebomb? Lin Yi was instantly shocked. As he wondered why this Yu Jie suddenly changed tactics, he asked in surprise, How do you know about the pill firebomb? So you really know this move. Then I was right to come. Yu Jie's eyes lit up. After the previous probing, Lin Yi had basically been eliminated as a suspect in his heart, but he still needed to confirm it one last time. He now wanted to know if this so-called pill firebomb was the same move as the big killing weapon that Lin Air threw on Nan Tianyong's face that day. About the pill firebomb, did Kong Mingming tell you? A light flashed in Lin Yi's mind, and he suddenly asked. He didn't know if the pill firebomb move existed on Heavenly Stage Island, but in this welcoming pavilion, the most obvious person that could be connected to the pill firebomb was Kong Mingming. Yu Jie couldn't help but be stunned. Kong Mingming told him that this Lin Yi was an alchemist, and that he knew how to use the pill firebomb. This in itself wasn't strange, but this Lin Yi directly guessed that it was Kong Mingming. This was a bit strange. What do you mean? Yu Jie asked in a low voice. Chapter 3867. Did that mean he was being used by Kong Mingming? Yu Jie immediately reacted. If Kong Mingming had a personal grudge against Lin Yi, then he and the Southern Sky Gate might have really been used this time. There's something you might not know. Kong Mingming is an alchemist, and the pill firebomb has always been his specialty, Lin Yi said with an unfathomable expression. Are you telling the truth? Yu Jie's expression turned cold. Kong Mingming had a personal grudge against Lin Yi. Kong Mingming knew how to make the pill firebomb, but he tricked him and the Southern Sky Gate into coming here to test Lin Yi. His intentions were obvious. Whether it's true or not, can't you tell with your abilities? Lin Yi asked calmly. I hope you're not lying. Otherwise, I believe you know better than me what will happen to you. Yu Jie glanced coldly at Lin Yi, then turned around and left as if he had received some orders. Before leaving, Yu Jie stopped in his tracks and turned around to say to Lin Yi, Do you know why I want to kill you? Because you're very similar to the person I'm looking for, at least in some aspects. That's why you're unlucky. After saying this, Yuzha quickly disappeared from Lin Yi's sight. Immediately after, Lin Yi discovered that Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai had come looking for him. Lin Yi finally understood. No wonder Yuzha had suddenly stopped. The Southern Sky Gate must have discovered Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, and was afraid that more newcomers would be attracted. That was why they used thousand-mile sound transmission to inform Yuzha to stop. Boss, how are you? Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were shocked when they saw Lin Yi's injuries. They quickly ran over and asked nervously, I'm fine. It's just some superficial wounds. No need to make a fuss. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head, but he was glad in his heart. Fortunately, his two brothers found him in time to help him out of trouble. Today was not going to be easy to pass. Who did it? Boss, should we chase after them now? Xiao Honkai could not help but feel indignant. How could a person with a personality like his just watch as his boss, Lin Yi, was injured? Even if he could not win, he still had to try. What's more, this was the welcome pavilion. The other party would at least have some scruples. Even if they weren't strong enough to fight one-on-one, if several of them attacked together, they might have a chance. There's no need. This small injury is already worth it. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. What happened just now had been a close shave, and he'd have gotten himself killed if he'd accidentally revealed his identity, but the last few sentences he'd exchanged with Yuzha were enough to repay him. If he wasn't wrong, then Southern Skygate and Yuzha would most likely turn their attention to Kang Xiaoming. The best part was that Kang Xiaoming used the pill firebomb as an excuse to draw their attention to him. He didn't know that in the end, little did he know, he had fallen into their trap. The Southern Skygate and Yuzha were both smart people, and smart people were extremely suspicious. Yuzha would not have placed the suspicion on Kang Mingming. After all, strictly speaking, Kang Mingming did not look like Lin Er. However, after what happened, it was impossible for the two smart people not to suspect him. Furthermore, this guy really did know how to use the pill firebomb. Lin Yi really wanted to give Kang Mingming two phrases. One was to go for wool and come home shorn. The other was to be caught in one's own trap. By the way, how did you guys find your way here? Lin Yi asked as he healed himself. He turned his head to ask Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. Although this place was not far from the newcomer's cave in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, under normal circumstances, no one would come here. Furthermore, judging from Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai's expressions, it was obvious that they were here to look for him. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other and said, Actually, that woman told us. She asked us to come and collect your corpse. Murongjin? Lin Yi was startled. He then remembered that when Yuzha came to look for him, although the other newcomers were in the cave and could not sense what was going on outside, Murongjin lived in a small wooden hut outside. Even the slightest disturbance would not escape her eyes. However, after what happened last night, this woman was obviously on the opposite side of him. If she allowed him to be killed by the Southern Skygate and Yuzha, wouldn't that be exactly what she wanted? Although her words were not pleasant, it was obvious that she wanted Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai to help him out. What was she planning? Could it be that she still had not given up on him? Lin Yi could not help but feel confused. He could only sigh. Women were really hard to understand. They made enemies out of nowhere, but in the blink of an eye, they would help him out of trouble. It was really confusing. However, he was sure that she did not have good intentions. Boss, do you think that woman has really taken a fancy to you? On the way back to the cave, Xiao Honkai chuckled with a face full of curiosity and gossip. Currently, in the eyes of the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples, the most eye-catching person was undoubtedly Murongjin. Each and every one of her movements affected the minds of the new disciples. Even someone like Xiao Honkai couldn't help but pay attention to her. Ever since Murongjin's appearance yesterday, although her every frown and smile was very attractive, she did not show much passion towards the newcomers. Only when she was with Lin Yi was she different. She seemed to take the initiative. If they were to find out that Beauty Morong had taken the initiative to go to Lin Yi's cave to take a bath, they would probably go crazy. Lin Yi rolled his eyes at him and curled his lips. What do you like about me? Strength or background? Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were momentarily at a loss for words. Although their boss, Lin Yi, was definitely unfathomable. In terms of strength and background, at least on the surface, he was not as strong as Beauty Morong. At that moment, Morongjin suddenly appeared in front of the three of them. She smiled coldly at Lin Yi and said, "I thought you didn't know how to appreciate favors. However, it seems that you do know your place. You're right. Whether it's strength or background, in my eyes, you're the same as trash. Therefore, I advise you to be more sensible and make a wise choice. This beauty's patience is not that good." Choice? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. "Lady Morong, I've already made it very clear. Well water does not interfere with river water. This is my choice." Chapter 38-68. Looking at Morongjin's back, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other. Although Lin Yi had reminded them to keep their distance from Morongjin yesterday, they had already guessed that this woman was an enemy, not a friend. They had never thought that this day would come so soon. An expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and a beautiful woman with an extraordinary background. This kind of enemy was very difficult to deal with. However, this was not what Lin Yi was thinking at this time. He suddenly understood why Morongjin would help him this time. The reason was very simple. She needed him to keep Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong in check. Now, among the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong were one group, while Lin Yi and the others were another group. As for Morongjin, it seemed that she did not want to join any group. After her attempt to subdue Lin Yi failed, she did not directly join Meng Jueguang's group. Instead, she wanted to become the third pole that could compete with the two groups. This was the only way to explain why this woman called Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai to help her out. If something happened to her, there was no doubt that the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion would be dominated by Meng Jueguang. Even with Morongjin's scheming, it would be difficult for her to compete with Meng Jueguang. After all, she had just arrived and had no foundation. It was possible to deal with a fool like Meng Tong, but Meng Jueguang was the eldest senior brother in charge. This position was not something she could replace. Taking refuge with him was no different from surrendering. This was not what she wanted to see. This woman wanted to control the overall situation. Now that she was not strong enough, she needed Lin Yi to distract Meng Jueguang's energy. This was the real reason why Morongjin helped her out. This also confirmed Lin Yi's previous impression of this woman. This woman, Morongjin, was really scheming. Otherwise, she would not have deliberately weighed the situation. After all, according to a normal woman's vengeful mentality, after becoming enemies with Lin Yi, even if her first reaction was not to kill him directly, she would definitely not help him out. It was already very open-minded of her to just stand by and watch. Only a truly shrewd person would make such a choice. This woman, Morongjin, was truly a scheming person. It looks like the following days will not be so peaceful. Looking at Morongjin's alluring back, Lin Yi could only helplessly shake his head. Originally, Lin Yi only needed to deal with Meng Jueguang and his gang. Especially since Meng Tong had laid low recently, no one tried to find trouble with him. Lin Yi could focus on cultivating and improving his strength. However, with the addition of this scheming woman, Morongjin, it was unrealistic for him to be so carefree in the future. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai exchanged glances with each other and nodded in agreement. Although they had yet to understand Morongjin's true intentions, they could feel that the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion were about to get lively. "Let's go. The challenge is about to begin. Let's see what this woman is going to do," said Lin Yi to the two with a smile. Due to Morongjin's participation, the situation had suddenly become complicated. Although Lin Yi was still confident that he could deal with these people, he could not afford to be too careless. Otherwise, if he was not careful, he might actually fail miserably. On the other hand, after Yuzha failed to test Lin Yi, he immediately returned to the Southern Heavenly Gate side. He told the Southern Heavenly Gate everything that had just happened in full detail. Although the Southern Heavenly Gate must have seen everything from the beginning to the end, Yuzha was the one who had actually fought against Lin Er, while the Southern Heavenly Gate did not even know what Lin Er looked like. Therefore, Yuzha had the biggest say on whether or not this Lin Er was the Lin Er they were looking for. After listening to Yuzha's detailed description, the Southern Heavenly Gate fell silent for a moment, before saying, "Just tell me one thing. Is this Lin E the Lin heir we're looking for?" Martial uncle. Although he looks similar at first glance, he's actually two completely different people. During the fight just now, I almost killed him a few times. If he really had the strength of Lin heir, he wouldn't have been able to hold himself back in the face of death, replied Yuzha in a deep voice. If it was said that this guy clearly had great strength, but in order to hide his identity, he would be too stupid. It was impossible for there to be such a fool in this world. If he lost his life, then what was the point of hiding? What he didn't know was that other people would fight back when faced with death, but Linny had the art of dragon mastery, which allowed him to quickly recover. Even if he was beaten half to death, he would still be able to recover. Furthermore, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's sudden appearance helped Lin Yi out of his predicament. The southern heavenly gate nodded slightly. His opinion was similar to Yu Zha's. Although he had never truly interacted with Lin heir, he knew that all experts had their own pride. If this Lin Yi was really an expert who could instantly kill Nan Tianyo, then without the southern heavenly gate's appearance, he would definitely not let a mere Yuzha act so presumptuously. Overall, this Lin Yi is just an ordinary newcomer. He's just a little stronger, but he's nowhere near Lin heir's level. Furthermore, according to what Meng Jueguang said, this guy is a poor bastard without any spiritual jades. Think about it. How could a poor bastard like him catch the attention of an old fox like Hong Zhong? Yuzha continued. Due to his previous investigation, he didn't really believe that Lin Yi and Lin heir were the same person from the beginning. However, when he heard Kong Mingming mention the pill firebomb, he felt that this move might really be similar to Lin heir's killer move, which was why he was still holding onto a sliver of hope. If that's the case, then we can eliminate this kid as a suspect. However, it's not like we didn't gain anything this time. Didn't this kid say that he has a grudge against Kong Mingming, and that the pill firebomb has always been Kong Mingming's signature move? The southern heavenly gate said with a dark expression. That's right. This Kong Xiaoming clearly knows how to make pellet fire bombs himself, but he's taking the initiative to please us. He's trying to divert our attention to someone unrelated to him. He's got ulterior motives. Yuzha was equally displeased. No matter if it was Yuzha or Southern Skygate, they both thought that they were smart people who could play with others in the palm of their hands. But now, they were being played like a monkey by Kong Xiaoming, a newbie from Rising Sky Pavilion. How could they be happy? One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. The southern heavenly gate's cold eyes flickered as he suddenly asked, "Martial nephew, think about it carefully. Could that kid, Kong Mingming, be Lin heir?" Chapter 3869. Although Kong Mingming was the same as Lin Yi, and his appearance was completely different from the Lin Yi they were looking for, this alone couldn't completely eliminate the suspicion. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tried to test Lin Yi again. Putting aside his appearance, Kong Mingming was more suspicious than Lin Yi in every aspect. First of all, he was a disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion, and he had the backing of a young master like Su Lingchong. Whether it was his background or strength, he should be above Lin Yi in theory, and closer to the image of Lin Yi. Secondly, if he wasn't Lin Yi, why would he rack his brains to divert the attention of the two people and pour dirty water on the irrelevant Lin Yi? If it was purely for personal revenge, why didn't he say that he knew how to use the pill firebomb? If you want to know if Kong Mingming knows how to use the pill firebomb, that's easy. Use the same trick you used on Lin Yi on him again, and the truth will naturally come to light. Southern Skygate sneered. Martial uncle, that's not good, right? Yuzha was shocked. To be honest, he had already taken a big risk by testing Lin Yi just now. If he had been seen by Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai just now, he might have had to go to the law enforcement hall to turn himself in. Now, Southern Skygate actually wanted him to test Kong Mingming again. One had to know that Kong Ming was a new deacon, and his status was much higher than Lin Yi's, an ordinary grassroots newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Behind him was young Master Su Lingchong, and once something went wrong, it wasn't something that Yuzha, a mere inner disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion, could handle. Southern Sky Gate frowned in dissatisfaction. "I will bear all the consequences for you. What are you afraid of?" If you shrink your head and feet, you won't be able to achieve anything. This, Yuzha couldn't help falling into a dilemma. Although Southern Sky Gate's words were domineering, the other side was still young Master Su's subordinate. If they really angered young Master Su and caused the situation to escalate, not to mention Southern Skygate, even the head of the Nan clan's 3 heroes, Nan Tianba, might not be able to handle it. At that time, the first one to suffer would definitely be him, Yuzha. However, Yuzha was coveting the Southern Skygate's lesser phaseless magic art, and he was counting on the Southern Skygate to help him find Lin Air. Therefore, he couldn't wait to please the Southern Skygate. So why would he dare to go against their wishes? If he were to test Kong Xiaoming, then he would be putting himself in danger. But if he were to go against Southern Skygate's will, then it would make Southern Skygate feel bad for him. Southern Skygate was a smart and sensitive person. After that, it would be very difficult to correct it. At that time, he would probably not be able to rely on the minor phaseless god technique anymore. At this time, Yuzha was really in a dilemma. Seeing Yuzha cowering, Southern Skygate was about to reprimand him, but at that moment, they suddenly heard a commotion from the welcoming pavilion. From the sound of it, the newcomer challenge competition had begun. Yuzha instantly found a life-saving straw and hurriedly said, "Martial Uncle, look, their newcomer challenge competition has begun. Even if the disciples want to test them, they have to wait until they finish. They can't attack Kong Ming in front of everyone. Don't you think so?" If he really made a move on Kong Xiaoming during the newcomers challenge, then forget about Yuzha. Even if it was the Southern Skygate who made a move, he wouldn't be able to handle it. They would definitely be beaten into the dust by the enforcement hall. This reason was impeccable. Southern Skygate could only nod and say, "That's good. After they finish the competition, you can find a chance to test him. We can ignore everything else for now, but whether or not Kong Ming knows how to use the Pillfire Bomb, we have to figure it out today. Do you understand what I mean?" Yuzha hurriedly nodded. Disciple understands. Southern Skygate's meaning was very clear. If Kong Ming knew how to use the Pillfire Bomb, then from his actions of trying to divert the two's attention, the possibility of him being Lin Air was definitely not small. To Southern Skygate, Lin Air could be anyone in the welcoming pavilion. With Southern Skygate's power, they could easily crush anyone in the welcoming pavilion. However, if it was Kong Ming, who Su Lingchong had personally admitted to being his subordinate, once young Master Su was involved, then the situation would become complicated. Under the background of Su Lingchong's covetous eyes, wanting to snatch the position of eldest senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, anything that could possibly involve young Master Su was no longer a small matter in the eyes of Southern Skygate. If they were the slightest bit careless, then it could become the fuse of an all-out war with young Master Su. Southern Skygate wasn't feeling guilty about this, it was just that up until now, he was far from being prepared to deal with it. However, from Yuzha's point of view, although he was relieved after hearing Southern Skygate's orders, he was still a little worried. The newcomer competition could only help him by some time. Once the newcomer competition ended, even if he didn't want to jump into this pit, Southern Skygate would definitely force him to. There was no helping it. This was the sorrow of being a follower. Sometimes, he would have to be the cannon fodder. Let's go take a look at that brat Kong Ming. Southern Skygate strode towards the newcomer arena of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even if he couldn't let Yuzha directly test him, it was still a good idea to use the newcomer competition as an opportunity to observe him. Who knows, there might be some unexpected gains. Yes. Yuzha followed behind Southern Skygate with complicated thoughts. At this moment, he was thinking about a problem. When the newcomer competition ended, what excuse could he use to continue pushing it away? Even though he knew it was a very risky pit, for a smart person like him, even if Southern Skygate forced him to, he definitely wouldn't jump into it easily. However, Yuzha never expected that this difficult problem that he couldn't solve even after racking his brain would be solved by Kong Ming of his own accord. The reason was simple. Kong Ming, in the following newcomer competition, was forced to use the Pillfire Bomb. There were so many newcomers in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Although they all expressed their willingness to take care of Kong Ming after receiving young Master Su's orders, The newcomers who were able to enter the Soaring Sky Pavilion all had a decent background. Even if they weren't as arrogant as Su Lingqiong, they were still the second generation. None of them were truly docile. Even among the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi was an anomaly. The newcomers in the Soaring Sky Pavilion were even more confident. Naturally, there were many troublesome newcomers who were dissatisfied with young Master Su's arrangements. Of course, not all newcomers with random backgrounds dared to ignore young Master Su's tyranny. Therefore, regardless of how they felt in their hearts, for the past 2 months, most of the newcomers in the Soaring Sky Pavilion were quite cooperative with young Master Su's orders on the surface. Chapter 3870. The newcomer who challenged Kong Mingming this time was called Shi Yuda. Although his background was not very powerful, with the help of the elders in his family, he had just found a powerful backer. He was the nephew of the second elder of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Although this young master was not as powerful as Su Lingqiong, the grandson of the third elder of Soaring Sky Pavilion, he was still powerful enough. He was definitely not afraid of Su Lingqiong. As a result, the dissatisfaction that Shi Yuda had suppressed in his heart for more than 2 months finally burst out in an instant. To be honest, Kong Xiaoming was just a newbie from the common world. His strength wasn't even close to the word strong. If it wasn't for Su Lingqiong looking after him, he would have been nothing more than a piece of shit in the eyes of the newbies from Soaring Pavilion. They were already being generous by not stepping on him. But because of young Master Su, they had to pinch their noses and lift up Kong Mingming. They had to watch this scum of the secular world ride on their heads and act like a tyrant. What kind of *T feeling was this? Aggrieved. After holding back for more than 2 months, Shi Yuda finally found the confidence to openly confront Su Lingqiong. He could challenge Kong Mingming in the newcomer challenge without any fear. This was not only to vent his anger, but more importantly, it was also to express goodwill to the nephew of the second elder. It should be known that Su Lingqiong was extremely ambitious in the circle of the second generation of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and many second-generation young masters were quite dissatisfied with him, and one of them was the nephew of the second elder. Now that Shi Yuda had taken the initiative to challenge Kong Mingming, Su Lingqiong's little brother, it was a show of loyalty. Once he succeeded, he would definitely be appreciated more in the future. As for strength, although he was still at the peak of Heaven stage, taking the initiative to challenge Kong Mingming, a master at the early stage of Foundation establishment, seemed to be courting death, but it was not impossible because Kong Mingming was an alchemist. An alchemist who relied on constantly taking pills to barely reach the early stage of Foundation establishment. One could imagine how weak they were. Even a Heaven stage great perfection expert like Shi Yuda might not necessarily have no chance of winning. Think about it, in a highly anticipated event like the Newcomer Challenge competition, if the weak could defeat the strong and step on Kong Mingming, the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, for the first time in history, how big of a sensation would it cause? Not only would he be able to vent his anger, but he would also be able to gain face for his new backer. More importantly, it was very likely that he would be able to leave an impression on the higher-ups of Soaring Sky Pavilion. What a great harvest this was! If Shi Yuda still did not dare to stand up and challenge Kong Mingming, then he would really be a newcomer of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Moreover, it wasn't as if he didn't have a trump card. Previously, he had taken a golden elixir. In this way, he could have the strength of an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator for a short period of time. He was even more confident in dealing with Kong Mingming. When he saw Shi Yuda standing up with a sneer and taking the initiative to challenge him, Kong Mingming was completely stunned. It was just as Shi Yuda had thought. Although he was an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, if he really wanted to fight to the death, he might not be able to defeat a Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert. If he lost to Shi Yuda, the Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert, then he, Kong Mingming, would really be nailed to the pillar of shame of Soaring Sky Pavilion. People would not care whether you were an alchemist or not. They would only pay attention to one thing. You, an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, actually couldn't defeat a Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert. Not only would Kong Mingming lose face, but he would also lose face. Even Su Lingqiong, the backer behind him, would lose face. At that time, it would be hard to say whether young Master Su would still take care of him like now. So this time, when faced with Shi Yuda's public provocation, Kong Mingming didn't dare to fail no matter what. Otherwise, if he lost young Master Su's care, who knew how miserable he would be in the future? What made Kong Mingming helpless was that even if he was an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, facing an aggressive heaven-stage great perfection expert, he really didn't have any confidence in winning. If he really let the opponent seize the initiative in the arena, even if he had an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator's true chi, there was still a possibility that he would be suffocated to death in the end. The only killing move he was confident in was only one move, the pill firebomb. The power of the pill firebomb was needless to say. If he really forced it out, not to mention the opponent was a mere heaven-stage great perfection expert, even an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator of the same level would be killed in one move. However, the biggest flaw was that this move needed time to accumulate power, and the greater the power, the longer the time needed to accumulate power in advance. Normally, Shi Yuda wouldn't give Kong Mingming such a chance at all. However, for a cunning person like Kong Mingming, it was really easy for him to find an excuse to delay time. I'm a newcomer, Deacon. If I directly accept the challenge and get injured, it is very likely that it will affect my duty to record and publicize the newcomer's points. This is an irresponsible behavior, so I need some time to find someone to hand over the work, just in case. This was the reason given by Kong Mingming. It was dignified and impeccable. Shi Yuda didn't expect that Kong Mingming would secretly take the opportunity to accumulate a big move. When both sides walked into the arena, Kong Mingming didn't say anything and threw a pill firebomb. Shi Yuda was directly blown up on the spot. The battle ended in an instant, and he ate his golden core for nothing. Seeing Kong Mingming walk off the arena with a smug face, everyone present was shocked. Before this, they thought that Kong Mingming was a soft persimmon that relied on young Master Su to get his position, but they didn't expect him to be such a ruthless character. To deal with a mere heaven-stage great perfection, he actually used such a big killer move. He almost blew up the entire arena that had been reinforced with arrays. What kind of hatred did he have? All of a sudden, everyone looked at Kong Xiaoming with awe that they had never felt before. It made Kong Xiaoming feel great. All along, although he had been acting like a tyrant in front of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's newcomers, it was all because of Su Lingchong's power. They dared not say anything even though they were angry. But today, he had defeated the blind Shi Yuda with one move, and he even used a pill firebomb, which was an extremely deterrent move. This time, Kong Mingming finally experienced what it felt like to be the #1 newcomer in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. It felt great. However, Kong Mingming never expected that although his pill firebomb had indeed shocked the Soaring Sky Pavilion's newcomers, it also fell into the eyes of Southern Skygate and Yu Zhe. That's right, the move that Lin Er used to kill Master was this pill firebomb. Yu Zhe was overjoyed when he saw this, and quickly pointed it out to Southern Skygate. Chapter 3871. When Lin Yi used the Super Chi Bomb against Nan Tianyong, it was very sudden and Yu Zhe was quite far away, so he couldn't see the details clearly. He could only vaguely feel the shocking power. At first glance, the feeling was quite similar to when Kong Mingming used the pill firebomb. Are you sure? Southern Skygate frowned. Disciple is sure, Yu Zhe said firmly. Kong Mingming's pill firebomb was very similar to the move he had seen before. Even if there was a slight difference, he would still insist on it to prevent Southern Skygate from forcing him to test the others. It was very risky to do this kind of thing too often. Southern Skygate did not doubt Yu Zhe's words when he saw how certain Yu Zhe was. His eyes were filled with anger. So, this kid Kong Mingming is most likely that Lin Er? How dare he fool me? Did he eat the guts of a leopard and think that I won't kill him? Disciple can't say that I'm 100% sure, but from this pill firebomb and the way this kid deliberately diverted our attention, there's an 80% chance he is. Yu Zhe was also filled with anger. No matter what, he was an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, but he was fooled by a mere newcomer like Kong Mingming. He could not take it anymore. Boom. Before Yu Zhe finished speaking, A huge rock beside Southern Sky Gate instantly turned into powder, attracting the attention of the newcomers. They pointed at it and discussed it. This boulder was smashed by the Southern Sky Gate in a fit of rage. He wanted nothing more than to tear Kong Xiaoming to pieces in front of everyone, but he wasn't a brainless idiot. No matter how angry he was, he knew that he couldn't attack Kong Xiaoming in front of everyone, so he could only vent his anger on the boulder. Being stared at by Southern Sky Gate and Yu Zhe, even in broad daylight with so many people around, Kong Ming could not help but feel a chill down his spine. He was puzzled. What's wrong with these two? Why aren't you hurrying over to kill Linny? Why are you glaring at me like a fiend? Under everyone's gaze, Kong Ming had no choice but to bite the bullet and walk over. He took the initiative to ask, "Eldest senior brother, what can I do for you?" The Southern Sky Gate was the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. In theory, every disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, including the new disciples, had to call him eldest senior brother. Although Kong Ming was trying to raise his status by calling him eldest senior brother, it was not wrong. The Southern Heavenly Gate looked at him coldly and said expressionlessly, "I've already seen Lin Yi. This time, I really have to thank Deacon Kong for your guidance. Don't worry, I will keep it in mind and will definitely repay you in the future." Kong Ming thought that the two of them had already killed Lin Yi. He was overjoyed. "You flatter me. It's my duty to serve eldest senior brother. I don't need anything in return. Eldest senior brother, you're too kind." He thought that the repayment that the Southern Sky Gate mentioned would be something good. At this moment, his heart was filled with anticipation. After all, the Southern Sky Gate was the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. His actions would definitely not be small. Little did he know that the repayment that the Southern Sky Gate mentioned was completely different from what he had in mind. "Don't worry, I won't be courteous." The Southern Sky Gate smiled coldly and left with Yu Zhe. Watching the two of them leave, Kong Ming was overjoyed, but he couldn't help but feel confused. Why did the two of them look so cold when they looked at me? "Martial uncle, what should we do next?" Yu Zhe couldn't help but ask. Although they had locked onto Kong Ming as a suspect, logically speaking, the target was very clear. What they should do next was also very clear. If it was someone else, they would have captured the person without hesitation. However, this person was Su Lingchong's underling. Even the Southern Sky Gate didn't dare to act recklessly. The Southern Heavenly Gate suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked Yu Zhe up and down with a cold expression. Only when Yu Zhe was scared out of his wits did he say, "Martial nephew, how did you end up in conflict with Second Lin?" The Southern Sky Gate wasn't clear about the conflict between Yu Zhe and Second Lin. He only knew that Nan Tianyong was killed by Second Lin because he wanted to avenge his disciple. However, he had never asked about the cause. Yu Zhe hesitated for a moment, then answered vaguely, "Martial uncle, disciple first started a conflict with Second Lin because he competed to buy an item from the Hong Merchant Guild. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Yu Zhe would never let the Southern Sky Gate know about the Star Ink Stone. After all, the Southern Sky Gate was an expert at the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm and was about to break through to the Golden Core realm. Therefore, the Star Ink Stone was even more attractive to him than to Yu Zhe. Once the Southern Sky Gate knew about the existence of the Star Ink Stone, then even if they could take it back from Second Lin, Yu Zhe wouldn't have a share. Yu Zhe obviously wouldn't do something as stupid as making a wedding dress for someone else. What is it? The Southern Sky Gate wasn't easy to deal with. It wasn't easy for Yu Zhe to trick him. He instantly realized the key point. Yu Zhe's heart tightened, but he forced himself to remain calm and said, "It's just a normal treasure used to aid in cultivation. It's not very valuable, but it's not very common." "Normal treasure?" The Southern Sky Gate frowned, then asked suspiciously, "Is it really just a normal treasure?" Then if Kong Ming really is Second Lin, as Su Lingchong's underling, and with such a hidden strength, would he compete with you for a mere normal treasure? Yu Zhe was speechless. He had made up a lie in a moment of desperation, but he forgot that the person in front of him was also extremely shrewd. He was immediately caught on to the loophole. Seeing that Yu Zhe was stuttering, The southern sky gate's expression instantly became even colder. He said in a deep voice, "I thought about it carefully just now. This Kong Ming was sent by Su Lingchong to find him for help, and he's also Su Lingchong's underling. If he really is second Lin, I suspect that Su Lingchong might be behind this." The southern sky gate paused, looked at the somewhat flustered Yuzha, and his tone became unprecedentedly stern. "Now that Su Lingchong is eyeing my position as the big senior brother, I definitely won't let go of any possible hidden dangers. If necessary, even if it's against Martial Nephew, I don't mind using some sinister methods. Martial Nephew, you should have heard from your master that I'm proficient in the small phaseless technique, and I've also fused some of those evil martial skills, so I know a soul-searching technique that can directly read other people's memories, right?" Chapter 3872. Soul-Searching Art. Yuzha had indeed heard about it from his cheap master, Nan Tianyang, who had died in his hands. It was a secret art that the Southern Heaven Gate had learned when he was still in the enforcement hall. It allowed him to read the memories of others. In front of him, there were no secrets to speak of. Of course, this secret art could only be used when the opponent had lost the ability to resist, and the opponent's divine sense had to be weaker than the user's. Once used, the target's divine sense would collapse. Even if they were lucky enough not to die, they would become a muddle-headed fool. Yuzha knew that if he continued to lie like this, Southern Sky Gate might actually attack him out of anger. At that time, forget about getting the Star Inkstone and becoming the strongest Golden Core expert. He might not even be able to live past today. Even if he was lucky, he would at most become a fool. What was there to look forward to? At that moment, Yuzha was sweating profusely. Although he wanted to fabricate another lie and continue to hide the secret of the Star Inkstone, under the pressure of Southern Sky Gate, even a sly person like Yuzha's mind was blank. It was easy to make up a lie, but to make it so perfect that even the Southern Sky Gate couldn't find any flaws in it was impossible in a short period of time. Once the Southern Sky Gate saw through even the slightest flaw, Yuzha would be done for today. With his strength, there was no way he could escape the Southern Sky Gate's grasp. At that moment, Yuzha was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He wanted to slap himself 18 times. What kind of person was Southern Sky Gate? Why did he want to make use of him? Wasn't he being blinded by his own greed? Now, not only did he not get any benefits, he even got himself into trouble. Have you made up your mind? If you don't want to say it, then don't blame me for not considering our relationship. Southern Sky Gate was about to attack. Since there was no one around, there was nothing to worry about. Yuzha jumped in fright and didn't dare to hesitate anymore. He hurriedly said, "Martial Uncle, please wait. It's not that I'm trying to hide it. It's just that this is a long story, and I'm afraid of wasting Martial Uncle's time. Since Martial Uncle wants to hear it, then I won't hide anything." "Okay, speak." Southern Sky Gate's expression softened a little. Words could lie, but the soul-searching technique would never. If it were not for the fact that the secret technique of soul-searching technique would also cause damage to one's divine sense, making it inadvisable to use it frequently, only then would he care about Yuzha's little life. He would probably have made a move a long time ago, but Yuzha didn't know that his little life was more important. In the end, he had no choice but to tell the entire story to the Southern Heavenly Gate. He even told them about the Star Inkstone, leaving out the fact that Nan Tianyong had died at his hands. With the Star Inkstone as a distraction, the Southern Sky Gate didn't care about such a small matter. After hearing the usage of the Star Inkstone, the eyes of this high and mighty soaring sky pavilion steward instantly lit up. "Staring Stone. Apprentice Nephew, are you certain that this item can assist in breaking through to the Golden Core stage? Let cultivators become the strongest Golden Core experts?" The Southern Sky Gate's tone was a little anxious. Although he was far above Yuzha in terms of seniority and experience, he wasn't like Yuzha, who had holed up in a place like the library for 3 whole years and read almost all the ancient texts. It wasn't strange that he didn't know the uses of Star Inkstone. Reporting to Martial Uncle, Disciple can't guarantee whether or not it really has such a miraculous effect. But the ancient texts did record it this way. Although Yuja's heart was bleeding, he still replied respectfully on the surface. Since he had already revealed the information about the Star Ink Stone, then the Star Ink Stone that he had been thinking about had nothing to do with him anymore. Therefore, Yuja decided that he had to curry favor with the Southern Sky Gate. Even if he couldn't dream about the Star Ink Stone, he had to at least get the minor phaseless god technique from him. Otherwise, he would really suffer a great loss. The ancient texts in the library are all well documented. Since it's all recorded like this, then there shouldn't be too many discrepancies. To be able to let someone become the strongest golden core expert, it's simply a rare treasure. Even with the shrewdness of the Southern Sky Gate, he couldn't hide the greed on his face. There was no cultivator under the golden core stage who wouldn't be moved by something like Star Ink Stone. No matter how deep their background was, they wouldn't be an exception. After a moment of excitement, the Southern Sky Gate suddenly slapped his head and said, "That's right. Originally, I wasn't sure if this matter had anything to do with Su Lingchong. But now that the Star Ink Stone is involved, everything can be explained." Disciple is slow-witted. Please enlighten me, martial uncle. Yuja was still immersed in the sadness of not being able to obtain the Star Ink Stone. So he didn't think about this at all. Martial nephew, think about it. You and I want the Star Ink Stone, and that second Lin wants it. Don't tell me that young Master Su Lingchong doesn't want it? The Southern Sky Gate asked. Of course he wants it. Whoever obtains it will have the chance to become the strongest golden core expert. Yuja nodded his head resolutely. A treasure like the Star Ink Stone was an existence that reigned above all factions and backgrounds. Even a second-generation cultivator with a deep background wouldn't be able to resist its temptation. Su Lingchong was naturally not an exception. Therefore, this indirectly proves that Kong Mingming is second Lin. I suspect that Kong Mingming's stealing of the Star Ink Stone was Su Lingchong's instigation. This is the only reason that can explain why the two of them teamed up to deceive us. The Southern Sky Gate said through clenched teeth. Martial uncle is wise. Yuja flattered without another word. He couldn't be bothered to figure out whether or not the Southern Sky Gate speculation was reasonable. The only thing he had to do now was to curry favor with the Southern Sky Gate. No wonder Su Lingchong dared to openly challenge me today. It turns out that after obtaining the Star Ink Stone, he doesn't place me in his eyes anymore. The Southern Sky Gate said through clenched teeth. However, he immediately thought back to the day when he visited Shanghai Tianhua. Shangguan Laner's reaction seemed to be purposely helping to conceal Second Lin's identity. Moreover, the matter of Su Lingchong courting Shangguan Laner was known to everyone in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. The Southern Sky Gate couldn't help but guess. Could it be that Shangguan Laner was involved as well? Could it be that Su Lingchong obtained the Star Ink Stone in order to curry favor with Shangguan Laner? This possibility wasn't impossible, because in a few days, it would be Shangguan Laner's birthday. It was very likely that Su Lingchong would use the Star Ink Stone as a present to curry favor with the Shangguan Laner. Although the Star Ink Stone was rare, if he could use it to become the grandson-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua, one Star Ink Stone was definitely not a loss. Chapter 3873. Thinking of this, Southern Sky Gate felt a headache. The situation was getting more and more complicated. Not only was young Master Su Lingchong involved, but even Miss Shangguan was involved. What should he do? It was true that Southern Sky Gate was the senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, but facing Su Lingchong alone was already stressful enough. If Miss Shangguan, who had an even fiercer background, was involved, he had no chance of winning. That way, if he dared to make a move on Kong Mingming, not only would he provoke Su Lingchong, he would also provoke Miss Shangguan, and might even provoke the big shots behind these two. If things were to develop to this point, not to mention Southern Sky Gate, even if the leader of the Nan family's three heroes, Nan Tianba, came back, he would be scared ***. Even if their uncle, Nantian Aurora, who was far away on Middle Island, appeared, it would still be useless. Their uncle, Nantian Aurora, was one of the most prosperous figures in the Nan clan's middle generation. Not only was he powerful, but he was also the chancellor of the Heaven Stage Islands Cultivators Academy. Be it his status or his influence, he was by no means insignificant. Unfortunately, this was the North Island's three great pavilions. Even if Nantion Aurora had some influence on Middle Island, he was too far away. Even if he stretched out his hand, people like Shanghai Tianhua, who were at the top of the North Island, would not listen to him. The situation was getting more and more complicated. With so many important people involved, even Southern Skygate couldn't help but lose his mind. At least, before boss Nantianba returned, he wouldn't dare to act rashly. The water in this matter was too deep. Although his title as the first senior brother of the Soaring Sky Pavilion steward was awe-inspiring, it was not useful at all. Let's go back first. When boss returns in 2 days, we'll discuss countermeasures. Southern Sky Gate frowned and pondered for a moment. In the end, he decided to bide his time. Southern Sky Gate and Yuzha returned to the cave with a belly full of thoughts. On the other hand, Lin Yi, after framing Kong Ming Ming, immediately appeared at the newcomer challenge. However, seeing a powerful rookie like Lin Yi, who had always shown off, appear covered in blood, the rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion were shocked. Even Meng Jueguang could not help but feel dazed. F***CK. What kind of big shot did this kid offend? God is blind. Why hasn't he been beaten to death even though he's injured to this extent? Meng Jueguang exclaimed in pity. Normally, when a new disciple was injured, his first reaction as a steward would be to report it to the higher-ups and then spare no effort to find the culprit. But now, he was too lazy to even go through this superficial formality. His attitude towards Lin Yi was clear at a glance. Beside him, Ming Tong gloated and said, "Ninth cousin, do you think it's possible that this kid went to harass Beauty Morong and got beaten up by her?" Looking at all the rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, including the steward, Meng Jueguang, apart from Lin Yi and a few others, all of them were drooling over the seductive Beauty Morong Zhan. Morong Zhan's special treatment of Lin Yi made them envious, especially people like Meng Tong, people who wished they could kneel down under Morong Zhan's skirt and lick her toes. They were even more envious and jealous of Lin Yi. Now that they saw Lin Yi injured, they could not help but think in that direction. He wasn't just spouting nonsense. Last night, Morong Zhan went to look for Lin Yi. Although it was already late at night, Morong Zhan was still living in a small wooden hut in an open space. His every move was being watched by the newcomers, so it was almost impossible for this kind of thing to escape the eyes and ears of those with ulterior motives. Naturally, Meng Tong was one of them. Although he didn't know what exactly had happened, he didn't care. However, it was certain that Morong Zhan and Lin Yi parted on bad terms. As for Lin Yi, everyone knew that he was a lecher. Although he pretended to be serious, it was hard to say how dirty he was. With his strength in the early stage of the building foundation realm, if he really angered Morong Zhan, who was at the peak of the early stage of the building foundation realm, he would be lucky if he was beaten up. It would not be too much for him to be killed directly. You're saying it was Morong Zhan's doing? Meng Jueguang observed Morong Zhan and Lin Yi with a playful expression. He realized that the relationship between the two of them was indeed not good. There seemed to be a faint sense of wariness and hostility between them. Meng Tong chuckled coldly. "Ninth cousin, think about it, out of all the newbies on our side, there's no one other than Miss Morong who could make Lin Yi suffer so much." That's true. Since Southern Skygate and Yuzhe were very careful to keep it a secret, Meng Jueguang did not think in that direction. There was only one question he was most concerned about at the moment, and that was Morong Zhan's stance. Before Morong Zhan came, it was already quite difficult for him to face Lin Yi and his gang alone. Especially recently, Meng Tong had been holding back on purpose, and Lin Yi and his gang had completely defeated him. He had almost lost his face as the senior brother in charge. All he could do was to comfort himself with one sentence: "A little impatience will spoil the great plan." Now, before Lin Yi's side was settled, another troublesome Morong Zhan, who was no less difficult to deal with than Lin Yi. Meng Jueguang had been worried for the whole night. After all, judging from Morong Zhan's behavior in the beginning, she seemed to have a good impression of Lin Yi. Lin Yi and his gang were already too much for Meng Jueguang to handle. If Morong Zhan, who was at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm, Were they going to be able to handle it? However, after seeing the subtle conflict between the two, Meng Jueguang finally felt relieved. As long as Morongzhan did not side with Lin Yi, things would be easier to handle. Morongzhan was only a woman. Even if her strength was not bad, she had no background as she had just arrived. No matter how cunning she was, in Meng Jueguang's eyes, it was impossible for her to stand on her own. She only had two choices: either side with Lin Yi or side with Meng Jueguang. Now, since Morongzhan was not on good terms with Lin Yi, she could only side with Meng Jueguang. This woman can actually be considered a rare stunner. Meng Jueguang pinched his chin and stared greedily at Morongzhan's enchanting figure. He could not stop praising her. In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, female cultivators were rare to begin with, and one as beautiful as Morongzhan was even rarer. Generally speaking, even if there was one, it was the exclusive property of young masters like Su Lingchong. It was impossible for a low-level steward like Meng Jueguang to benefit from it. This time, Meng Jueguang knew his chance had come. Morongzhan was not a chaste woman. Once she was forced to side with him, she would not be unreasonable. It was time to have a good time. Chapter 3874. Just as Meng Jueguang had expected, Morongzhan did not show any displeasure when he sensed his burning gaze. Instead, he licked his lips seductively and winked at Meng Jueguang. In an instant, Meng Jueguang's entire body went limp. If it wasn't for the rookie challenge being held in such a public setting, he probably would have dragged this coquettish woman into the cave abode to have a 300 round of sex. Meng Tong curled his lips in jealousy. Although Meng Jueguang was his backer, when it came to women, even his father had to step aside. Of course, with his current strength, he could not escape from Meng Jueguang's protection. No matter how dissatisfied he was, he could only hold it in for the time being. Unexpectedly, Meng Jueguang quickly recovered from his captivation and returned to normal as he said, "You really are a hussy. But if you want to obtain my approval, you're still far from it." No matter how much he coveted Morongzhan, Meng Jueguang was not as simple-minded as Meng Tong. He could not make him bow down to her with just one look. If Morongzhan did not take any action, then even if she took the initiative to offer herself, Meng Jueguang would only be putting on a show. He would not treat her as one of his own. The action that Meng Jueguang wanted to see was very simple. He wanted Morongzhan to stand up and deal with Lin Yi in front of everyone. That was the real proof of loyalty. This newcomer challenge competition was Morongzhan's first official appearance since she came to the Welcome Pavilion. Only through her actual actions could one truly guess her stance. Apart from that, all the flowery words were useless. Not only Meng Jueguang, but Lin Yi was also staring at Morongzhan's actions, trying to figure out her real intentions. This woman was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. In other words, apart from Lin Yi himself, the rest of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, including Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, were all at the same level. They were far from being her opponents. This was a variable that could break the balance of the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion. If this woman really wanted to do something, even if Lin Yi could handle it, his subordinates, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, would not be able to handle it. A moment later, under everyone's gaze, Morongzhan, the newcomer who had just arrived, was the first to walk onto the ring. She said in a clear and charming voice, "Sir Judge, I, Morongzhan from cave number 16 at the foot of the mountain, challenged Chao Wu from cave number 15 at the foot of the mountain." As soon as he said that, everyone present was stunned, and Chao Wu, who was the one being challenged, instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. *CKU. I've already been sent to the most dilapidated and worn-out cave abode number 15 at the foot of the mountain, and that's not enough. Now, a freaking Morongzhan came and called me out as soon as he arrived. You're a freaking expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Beautiful. Chao Wu couldn't help but want to roar in front of everyone. Unfortunately, he didn't have the guts. After hearing these words, he could only weakly walk onto the stage and directly admit defeat. None of them dared to challenge Morongzhan, an expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation building realm. Cha Wu's fate was to pay a little challenge points and hand over the number 15 cave residence at the foot of the mountain, which he thought was already the worst, and move to an even worse wooden house. As a result, his negative score in the first 4 rounds of the newcomer exam was already a foregone conclusion. There was no way to escape. Unexpectedly, before Morong Jean got off the stage, he took the initiative to suggest, "Little brother, if you don't mind, we are only exchanging rankings, and you can continue to live in the number 15 immortal cave at the foot of the mountain. How about it?" Cha Wu was instantly stunned. Everyone else looked confused as well. Morongjian covered her mouth and smiled. She said in a coquettish voice that made one's scalp tingle, I'm a neat freak. I don't want to live in a dirty cave residence. Instead, I prefer the wooden house that everyone built for me." That's great. Thank you, Ms. Morong." Cha Wu immediately expressed his gratitude after he came to his senses. Although the number 15 cave residence at the foot of the mountain was the worst cave in the Welcome Pavilion, it was not worthy of an expert like Morong Jean's attention. However, for a lowly person like him who was at the bottom of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers, no matter how bad the spiritual energy in the worst cave residence was, it was still much better than the wooden house outside. Morong Jean flashed a charming smile, then walked down the arena while swaying her hips. While Morong Jean was enjoying the admiration of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers, Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang shook their heads at the same time. They did not understand the meaning behind Morong Jean's actions. During the newcomers' challenge round, one had to fight from the last abode all the way up. This was the best strategy to obtain as many challenge points as possible. It would not be strange for anyone else to do so, but it was strange for Morong Jean to do so. She had joined the class midway and was already a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert. Furthermore, she had the background of an elder of the Soaring Pavilion. Even if she were to stay in the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future, she would not have to worry about not having a backer. In theory, there was no need for her to pay too much attention to the newcomer assessment, which was already halfway through. There was no need for her to start from the last cave residence. According to Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang's conjecture, Morong Jean's appearance today was to ensure that she would be able to survive here in the future. It was highly likely that she would use her actions to make her stand clear. For example, she could challenge either Xiao Ran or Xiao Hongkai. She could also directly challenge Lin Yi. Only then would Meng Jueguang feel her value. Of course, there were other possibilities as well. For example, she could challenge Meng Tong. Even though this would make Meng Jueguang see her as an enemy, it was also a way to make her presence known. Because of Lin Yi's group, even Meng Jueguang could not do anything to her. However, Morong Jean did not choose any of the above. Instead, she chose a method that nobody expected. She chose to challenge Cha Wu, who was in the 15th cave. Therefore, no matter Lin Yi or Meng Jueguang, they could not understand what this woman was planning. To them, challenging Cha Wu was a completely meaningless move for Morong Jean. Even if she did not do anything, there was no need for her to do anything unnecessary and arouse suspicion. Or, in other words, Morong Jean's goal was to make Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang doubt her, which would make them hesitate. This was not impossible. Even though Morong Jean had already fallen out with Lin Yi, if she wanted to become the third pole of the tripod, she could not directly side with Meng Jueguang. Otherwise, she would directly go against Lin Yi. If she was misunderstood by Lin Yi and the two of them fought to the death, then she could only become Meng Jueguang's subordinate and accomplice. She wanted to make her presence known, make Meng Jueguang feel like he was getting closer to him, and at the same time, not make Lin Yi misunderstand her. Throughout this process, she wanted to establish her position in front of the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion. This was Morong Jean's true intention. As for the next few rounds of the rookies' challenge, everything went according to Morong Jean's plan. She did not fight against any of the core members of Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang. She only challenged the caves one by one. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.